Jason Cooper had always assumed that he understood Lauren better than anyone. After all, they had been married for 5 years, sharing our pleasures, struggles, and future ambitions. He recalled the day he proposed. Her eyes lighted up as she replied yes. It seemed like they had everything under control. But that night, sitting at the kitchen table with the distant sound of the TV, filling the comfortable silence, Lauren said something that stopped Jason in his tracks with the same calm as someone discussing the weather or a new restaurant they wanted to try. She mentioned that on Friday. I am going out with a coworker. Jason blinked a few times, expecting for her to say something to clarify what he'd just heard. But Lauren simply reached for another slice of bread, smeared butter on it, and continued as if nothing had occurred. He needed a moment to collect his thoughts. Perhaps he had misheard. Maybe she was testing his sense of humor with a stupid joke, but the way she kept her eyes fixated on her plate and avoided looking directly at him gave him an odd feeling. What? He asked in a calmer tone than one could expect in such a setting. Lauren looked up, and for the first time, Jason noticed something else. There was something deliberate about her reaction, as if she had been expecting it. It's only dinner. It doesn't affect anything between us, she continued, her voice disconcertingly light. I love you, and none of this will have an effect on our marriage. Jason kept his gaze fixed on hers, hoping to see a crack in that cool veneer, but Lauren appeared completely relaxed, as if she thought this was usual. Jason's fork remained undisturbed on his plate. His appetite was gone. His heart raced in his chest, but he didn't show it. He would not give her that power. Lauren apparently expected him to explode in anger, yell, ask angry questions, or issue an ultimatum. But Jason was different. And if there was one thing he was good at, it was controlling his emotions. He took a long breath, then slowly exhaled. He had made up his mind. If this were a game, he wouldn't lose. Then, to Lauren's amazement, Jason raised the corner of his mouth in a small smile. I see, he replied in an almost indifferent tone, picking up his glass of water and sipping. Lauren's breathing became slightly unsteady. It wasn't evident, but Jason noticed it, which confirmed his suspicions. She did not want his consent. She expected a reaction. The stillness between them lasted seconds but felt like eternity. Lauren attempted to mask her uncertainty by lowering her attention to her food, but Jason continued to regard her with patient patience. So, he continued, sounding a little too casual. Maybe I should go out with someone and see what it's like. Lauren finally looked at him. For real. Not with the prepared serenity of before, but with something fresh. Uncertainty. Jason couldn't hide his delight at the slight trembling in her palm, as she clutched her fork. She blinked many times, as if attempting to understand what he had said. She had not expected that. She hadn't expected Jason to respond this way. Did you meet someone? She inquired, attempting to appear uninterested. He kept smiling and shrugging. There's a woman in the gym. We talk a lot. I believe it would be fun to go out one of these days. That's when he noticed Lauren's face turn a little pale. The tables had shifted, and Jason hadn't even begun playing for real yet. The hush that ensued was deafening. Lauren's confident facade fell for a single second, and Jason exhaled. The fork she was holding hovered frozen above her plate. Her eyes, which had been filled with assurance just minutes before, had widened somewhat, as if her mind was fighting to grasp the unexpected response. She had just heard. Jason maintained a covert smile while sitting back in his chair, as if this conversation was not waiting for him. But within, he felt a strange, calculating pleasure at seeing Lauren experience the uncertainty he'd felt only minutes before. Oh, I see, she mumbled, attempting to regain her calm. She looked aside and fiddled with her meal. Jason saw the tiny twitch of her leg beneath the table, a tremor she was attempting to conceal. He knew Lauren well enough to realize she wasn't as relaxed as she pretended to be. So, why did she suddenly look anxious? If she truly thought going out with someone else was normal, why was she visibly upset when she learned he might do the same? Jason recognized Lauren was testing him, but the test had backfired on her. So he asked, maintaining a casual tone. Is there an issue with that? She gave a brief, low giggle and shook her head. Of course not. I really wasn't expecting that from you. He raised an eyebrow. Funny, he said, crossing his arms. Because I wasn't expecting this from you this time. Lauren did not laugh. Jason's remark struck her hard, and the forced lightness she had maintained up until then began to collapse. She attempted to recover immediately, lifting her chin and maintaining a carefree demeanor. So, who is the woman at the gym? Jason smiled to himself. He knew that question was coming, and what was most surprising was that Lauren hadn't even tried to hide her newfound excitement before throwing forth the idea of relationship freedom, as if it were a modern, open concept that they might explore without fear. The mere suggestion of another woman had put her on the defensive. I'm not sure it matters much, he said, picking up a handkerchief to wipe the corners of his lips. If it doesn't affect anything between us, I don't see why we should discuss details. Lauren gave a short, nasal laugh. But the stress in her expression was clear. So, it's genuine. Are you actually going out with this woman? Jason tilted his head slightly, as if trying to figure out what was going on inside of her. You're the one who stated you wanted us to look into this together, correct? She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. For the first time that night, Lauren felt lost for words. The tension in the room became almost palpable. The confidence she had when she started this game was vanishing right in front of her eyes. What was supposed to be a test to see how much control she still had over Jason was evolving into something altogether different. Jason didn't need anything else at that time. He had already gotten what he desired. Lauren never expected him to agree to her plan, and more significantly, she knew deep down that she was about to lose something she never believed could slip through her fingers without a word. He picked up his glass, drank his final sip of water, and rose from the table. Good night, Lauren. She sat there, watching him exit the kitchen, with a distant expression on her face. In that moment, Jason realized the tables had not only turned. He was already in charge of the game. In the days that followed, Jason and Lauren's relationship shifted. The house, which had previously been full of casual chats and typical routines, was suddenly filled with silences that spoke louder than words. Jason carried on with his usual routines, exhibiting no signs of being shaken by what had happened that night. He departed for work, returned home at the same time as usual. But he appeared lighter. Lauren began to grasp what was going on. At first, she told herself it was only a phase. Jason was messing around and appearing uninterested, so she backed off. Only he did not back down. On the contrary, he became even more unpredictable. Lauren first felt actual pain on a Wednesday morning, when she was drinking coffee and noticed Jason standing in front of a mirror in the hallway, fixing his collar. He had done that before, but this time was different. He looked at himself more closely. He ran his hand through his hair and examined his appearance twice. He picked up his phone and smiled. Lauren could not ignore it. Her pulse beat, and she felt something for her husband that she had never felt before. Fear of losing him. She tried to mask her disquiet throughout the day, but the vision kept playing back in her head. Who was messaging Jason? Had he actually met someone that night while they were sitting on the couch watching TV? She made a casual remark. You seem to be more excited recently. Jason gave a small smirk while keeping his gaze fixed on the television. Do I? She crossed her legs and attempted to sound casual. Yeah, you seem to have been busier this time. He gazed at her but did not respond immediately away. His stare was critical, as if he were analyzing the intentions underneath her remarks. Then, with deliberate composure, he remarked, Yes, I guess I'm making better use of my time. Lauren felt a shiver run down her spine as he said. In the days that followed, she found herself studying Jason in ways she had never done before. He was receiving additional messages on his phone. Sometimes he'd go for a run earlier than normal. One day, he got home from work and went directly to the shower, humming a song she didn't know. That's when her darkest worries were realized. Jason casually stated during breakfast that she had planned to go out with a coworker that same Friday. I am going out tonight. Lauren's coffee cup froze halfway into her mouth. Oh, yes. She attempted to sound unconcerned. Yes, with the woman from the gym. Lauren felt as though she had been hit in the stomach. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words emerged. Her mind raced, searching for a rational response, a means to change the course of events. But there was no other way. Jason had agreed to the rules of the game. She had began. Lauren was unsure for the first time if she was prepared to perform that night. Lauren was alone at home. Jason went without a hurry, wearing a shirt she couldn't remember. He had his cologne trailing behind him along the corridor. He didn't provide any details. I didn't inquire where she was heading. Above all, he didn't appear to be bothered that she was purportedly on a date. Lauren was confronted with a crushing weight of truth. She did not go out. The coworker who was going to join her for dinner sent texts asking whether they were still on, but she did not respond. How could she? Her mind was far away, preoccupied on Jason. She paced around the house for hours, trying to convince herself that nothing mattered. But as minutes passed, the stifling feeling inside her became greater. Then, without noticing, she took up her phone and began randomly opening and closing apps. I'm just searching for a distraction. But deep down, she knew exactly what she was doing. Waiting for him to send a message. Waiting for him to come home sooner than he promised. Waiting for everything to be nothing more than a ruse. For him to realize at the last minute that this was all nonsense. But Jason did not arrive home early. He did not text. He displayed no signs of regret. That was when genuine desperation set in. Lauren spent the night on the couch, watching TV, and some weird program, but she didn't pay any attention. Her gaze fixed on the door, listening for the familiar sound of keys in the lock. When Jason finally arrived, it was past 3 a.m. He walked in gently, with no urgency or remorse. Lauren could tell he did not expect her to be awake, but she was. At that point, something inside her snapped. How was it? Her voice came out softer than she wished. Jason removed his jacket, hung it over the back of a chair, and stared at her with the same blank face he'd used for the past few days. It was good. Lauren was cut like a cold blade by the straightforward, direct answer. She felt panic flood over her. She wanted to ask inquiries. I was looking for details. I wanted him to admit it was a mistake and that it meant nothing. She couldn't bring herself to say any of that. Jason showed no remorse. He was not trying to hide anything. And perhaps that was the worst part of all. He crossed the living room and disappeared down the hallway, headed to his bedroom as if the conversation ended. Lauren remained transfixed, her heart thumping so loudly that she could hear it through her ears. She had hoped to play a game with Jason. She'd wanted to put him to the test. She had wanted to see him uncertain. But now she was secretly wishing it was all a game. Only this time, Jason was no longer playing. Lauren awoke the next morning with an unfamiliar feeling. A true, uncontrollable terror. She was afraid Jason was not the same man she knew. Fear that she had passed a line that she would never be able to recover from. She awoke slowly, her body heavy with sorrow from the night before. She strolled down the hallway to the kitchen and saw Jason having coffee as if nothing had occurred. Seeing him so calm and distant made her stomach flip. She looked at me as if I were a stranger. He said nothing when she walked in. He did not even look up from his phone. He merely continued scrolling. She cleared her throat, taking occasional sips from his mug, hoping to loosen the lump in her throat. You arrived home late. She tried to make it sound like a casual observation. Jason had no special reaction. Yes, he responded simply. That casual tone made her feel even more apprehensive. Lauren took out a chair and sat facing him. She sought to detect reluctance in his gaze, a clue that this was still a game. However, Jason did not appear to be pretending. He did appear aloof, which terrified her in ways she hadn't expected. Jason. Her voice quivered. She despised the weakness that came out, but she couldn't help herself. What are we doing here? He finally looked up to her. He looked at her for a few seconds, as if he was debating if it was worth answering that question. Then, with such stillness that her skin crawled, he said, You tell me. After all, was this your idea? Lauren felt her stomach drop. She gulped hard. I never believed you'd take it seriously. Jason laughed, but not in amusement. A laugh from someone who could now see things properly. And what were you expecting? I would implore you to reconsider. She opened her lips to respond, but he did not wait. I've spent the previous few days thinking about this. Lauren, consider what it means to even suggest something like this. Consider what it reveals about us. She felt her chest tightening. Jason, I botched up. He did not blink. I messed up. Silence stretched again, cruelly. Lauren wanted to scream, yes, it was all a mistake. That she should not have came up with such a foolish concept. But she knew it was meaningless. Jason had already made up his mind. He stood up, brought his cup to the sink, and rinsed it quietly, as if he had just finished his morning routine. Then he turned to her with a chilly expression, and whispered something that took her breath away. Thank you for showing me who you truly are. He strode out of the kitchen without hesitation. Lauren felt a chill run down her spine. She remained motionless, sat, as a mounting sense of sorrow grew across her chest. A few minutes later, when she finally mustered the confidence to walk to her bedroom, she discovered a stack of documents on the table. The divorce filing has already been signed. Lauren's world crumbled all at once. She wanted to put Jason to the test. She wanted to see how far he'd go. However, in the end, she was the one who lost everything. Lauren was leaning against the bedroom door when she noticed Jason taking the bag out of the closet. The sound of the zipper rang in the deep calm, and she knew it was the end. But, driven by desperation, she took a step forward, attempting to maintain some remaining control. Jason, please. Her voice was unsteady, and she contrived a grin that resembled a plea. This went too far. I forgive you for going out with that gym woman. Let's just forget about all of this. If you ignore what I stated about getting out with a coworker, I will forget what you did. Let's start over. Jason waited for a second, firmly gripping the suitcase. He looked at Lauren's eyes and saw fear. The worry is not of losing him because of love, but of losing control. He shook his head and laughed quickly, and without amusement. Lauren, I do not need your forgiveness. You've taught me something essential in the previous several days, and I now know I deserve more. He closed the suitcase, grabbed his keys, and walked out without looking back. Lauren heard the latch clicking for the last time before the silence grew oppressive. Here's the next story. Yes. He had a hearing, which required him to skip yet another school meeting. This time, his daughter was in her senior year of high school. Their third and final child. This was the final school meeting Norm and Hutch Hutchinson, an attorney and certified public accountant, would attend until they had grandkids. He listened as his wife admonished him again for missing practically all of their children's school activities. He'd heard the same spiel about being an absent parent and a less than attentive husband for the past 6 months. After being appointed to Deputy Director of Curriculum and Athletics, her appearance and tone had become almost condescending. It was as if she no longer needed him. I told you about it 2 weeks ago. I recall just what I said. Lorna insisted. Oh, I'm sure I did, Hutch said. If you could switch off your cell phone somewhere between text messages and phone calls, we might be able to have a normal conversation. Hutch glanced at his watch before continuing. It's only 10:30 at night. Is there anyone who urgently needs to contact the Deputy Director of Curriculum and Athletics? Lorna stood in the center of the bedroom, arms crossed over her chest, legs slightly apart, and glaring at him. Nothing worse than your labor. I recall the calls that you had to receive, even on our wedding anniversary. Hutch, the embodiment of self-control, inquired quietly. That's why I turn my phone off when I go home. And you? Is it on or not? She continued to gaze at him, contemplating. Yes, it is turned on, and I will take it with me to the restroom tomorrow morning because calls and texts will begin as early as 6 a.m. Then she stamped her foot and, raising her voice, yelled something. Damn it. I'm not sure why I'm even attempting to discuss things with you with such and such a fantastic lawyer. I see you more in newspapers and on television, where you compete with corporate behemoths, than at home. So, forget about it. Let's go to bed. In bed, he lay on his back and fell asleep immediately. She lay on her side, facing him, and placed her hand on his chest. She said, Norm, I really love you. I just want you to devote more time to me and the children. 25 years of marriage and a good profession. Can't you find some more time for us? Then she fell asleep. Hutch drove to the office the following morning, on Tuesday. He thought on his wife's overall mood throughout the previous 6 months, particularly in the recent 5 weeks following her promotion. She seemed like a separate person, as if he was living with a stranger and having sex. It was only sex. 6 months before, they had thoroughly enjoyed each other, and their intimacy was a natural extension of a beautiful evening. Their intercourse now appeared to be a simple fulfillment of basic physiological needs. And that was all. She would become really excited at times, but this hadn't happened since she began competing for promotion. Is she truly having an affair? Is she with someone else? Flashed through his mind. Then he realized that she didn't give him any unique reasons. Not the same as previously. What happened to the luscious Georgia peach? Hutch walked into the elevator in the building that housed his legal firm, and I married a quarter of a century ago. He was about to hit the button for the top level and go directly to his office. However, he changed his mind and pressed the button on the floor below. On this floor was the man's office. Hutch contacted their IT specialist, Fred Smith. Essentially, one of his legal collaborators was also an extremely skilled hacker. Since joining the company 10 years ago, he has led them into the digital age and kept them on the cutting edge of technological advancement. According to former government employees that Hutch employed for his forensic audit agency, their computer network was comparable to, and occasionally better than, that of government entities. Hutch was not shocked to see Freddie at his office, given that he was a bachelor and one of the first individuals to arrive at work in the morning. Hello, Freddie. How are you this morning? Everything's okay, boss. How about you? Okay. I'm thinking about emails, Freddie. Can you get into someone else's mailbox? Oh, of course. Who exactly? My wife, Lorna. Freddie blinked with confusion. Boss, why do you need this? She has been acting strangely for almost 6 months now. Recently, I've had cause to assume she has someone. Do you think she is cheating on you? Freddie inquired in amazement. Hutch examined him closely for a few seconds. He wished he would never have to harbor such suspicions about his wife. I don't know for certain. Freddie. Just between us, okay? If I don't find anything, I don't want Lorna to find out I've been following her. Will you be able to view previously sent and received emails, even if they were deleted? Oh yeah, boss. Unless she employed specific ways that most people are unaware of. But I'll need to get to her computer. Fine. What if you need to know who is behind a specific mailing address? Certainly. I taught this to the guys in the forensic department, along with a number of other stuff I learned from the former FBI and CIA officers you hired. Yes, Freddie, that's correct. You are an excellent find for our firm. Thank you. Sir. I'm serious, Freddie. Look, when we figure everything out, I will make sure your assistance and silence are rewarded. Oh no, sir. Knowing that I assisted the main character here is a reward in itself. Okay, fair enough. For now. You know what? I am going to get some bugs. And then, about 11 a.m., let's spend some time on her computer. I'd like to put wiretapping in his room and the kitchen. In these places, I've seen that she speaks quietly on her mobile phone. Well, boss, I think it would be better if we went to one store that I know where you could get everything you need for what you're planned. This way, there is less possibility that someone will discover what we are doing. We can also purchase a flash drive, which I will load with anything I find today. Then I'll set up a shadow account, where all of her sent and received emails will be replicated. Fantastic thoughts, Freddie. The district gave her a laptop, but I doubt she'd use it for that. Either way, a good idea. Meet me at 11 a.m. in the garage on the first floor. Later that day, Hutch was reviewing over his wife's correspondence from the previous month. His attention was drawn to her correspondence with KB Print Me 3. He concluded that their correspondence showed that this man was her lover. This made him angry and disgusted. Lorna was sharing her most private thoughts to this man. Many of them, he believes, should have been intended just for her husband if she still loved him and was unsure what to do about it. He received a call from Fred. What have you got for me, Freddie? About 40% of her personal letters are to KB. Print Me 3. You are correct regarding her work account. I looked at it. It is merely business. Correspondence. Yes, I understand. I suspect this is her lover. Did you discover his identity? Yes, boss. This is Kenneth Burns. He is the principal at Madison Elementary School. This is the third school built in the district. It is really daring to conduct such correspondence at work. Email. However, he appears to be a very powerful figure. I saw he was one of the primary presenters at the administration conference last year. Apparently, he believes himself untouchable. I checked the district's website. It is their favorite. He has been published in State School Administrator magazine, presented at numerous conferences, and increased the district's profile. Hutch slumped back in his chair. So, the conference happened around 8 months ago. Lorna traveled there with him and another director. According to recent letters, he is either going to, or has already reached his aim. I never imagined Lorna would be drawn to someone else. However, it becomes increasingly difficult to refute. I am sorry, sir. I would not have guessed so either. Listen, Freddie, I want you to choose someone in the forensics department who you feel comfortable working with, and who I can trust as much as you. I don't like where this is heading. I need someone who knows how to gather information from many sources. I want to hear all of Lorna's phone chats with this guy in general. How are you doing on time? Tomorrow, at 10 a.m.? It's 10 in the morning. It's okay, sir. Great. Bring the one you've decided on to my office tomorrow at 10. Oh. I will brief my secretary, Janet, on how to manage Lorna's calls and help you. Also, I'll contact Jim Patrick, the head of the forensics department, and inform him that you'll be selecting one of his staff for a special assignment. I will also approach your department's leadership to free you from current affairs. Okay, sir. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Wednesday. 10 a.m. Freddie entered Hutch's office with a woman who resembled a typical nerd. She was between 25 and 30 years old, with brown eyes, a broad smile revealing a major underbite, and straight brown hair trimmed into a bowl cut. Her clothes were 3 colors of gray and resembled those of an old teacher. She wasn't exceptionally slender, but standing 163 cm tall, she had a boyish shape with an almost flat chest. Freddie introduced her to both Hutch and Janet. This is Rosalind Simmons, boss. She is one of the top forensic accountants on your team. Hutch got up from the table to greet them. I understand, Ross. She exposed some of our most prominent scams. Find the criminals. He shook her hand. You even exposed the CEO of that international corporation last year. Given his income, I'm still not sure why he needed to steal. Well, boss, she's called Mrs. Colombo because people underestimate her. Freddie explained. Yes, I heard about it. Good decision, Freddie. What did you say to her about our business? Only that it affects your wife. That concludes the story thus far. Only the 3 of us are aware of the situation. Fine. Hutch sat at the edge of the table. Freddie and Roz sat opposite him. He proceeded. The initial step is to wiretap all of their communication channels. We've already connected our home phone. Freddie, have you looked into her work email? Yes, sir. Unlike her lover, she exclusively uses it at work. And Roz is our mobile phone tracking expert. Rose talked with a faint, almost squeaky voice. Give me your phone number. And by the end of the day, everything will be saved to the server. I don't think it will be difficult to connect your wife's business phone and his to the system. However, these recordings cannot be utilized in court. Hutch stood up. I just need information right now, Roz. But thank you for noting it. Freddie, work with Roz to conduct a comprehensive background check on this individual. Meet me here tomorrow at 8 a.m. Rose, please purchase 3 prepaid mobile phones for us. Check that they are not associated with our company in any manner. Oh yes. One more thing. My secretary, Janet, will be the only other member of our team. She has worked with me for almost 20 years and knows Lorna about as well as I do. She will be your office support while you are out in the field, and she will be able to correctly answer calls that come in. So, Roz, buy prepaid phones. Okay. See you tomorrow at 8 a.m. We want to gather here every morning at 8 until we have resolved this issue. Any questions? Rose asked. Sir, what is the desired outcome? What do you hope to achieve? Hutch paused for a bit before responding. My desired outcome is very simple. I want my dear wife back. If getting this guy out of her life means destroying him, then so be it. This was not an issue for Rose. She has deposed people in far higher positions than Ken Burns. When Roz and Freddie left his office, Hutch sat in a chair, leaned back, and mumbled. Lorna, Jean, you are my wife, and I love you very much. I will not let some pathetic academic rake get between us. I recognize I'm partly to fault for him getting this far, so let's see what I can do to improve matters. He recreated the last 25 years of their marriage in his mind. They were good. What happened in the last 6 to 7 months? He thought of his wife. She was usually delightfully appealing. Not gorgeous, but with the refinement that distinguishes her as a woman of the finest class. And, more significantly, she was intelligent. He always assumed she was too intelligent to fall for someone's cheap falsehoods. So, what happened? Why has her attitude changed? He spoke aloud, occupying the top 3 floors of the 30-story building he owned. Hutch shifted in his chair and peered out the window. Still thinking about his wife, he was proud of her accomplishments and admitted she was the best parent. His thoughts drifted back to her beauty at 43 years old. Standing 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing 145 pounds, with breasts larger than he could fit in the palm of his hand, her feminine curves remained in place. He was curious what this 30-year-old smartass would say about the stretch marks on her stomach and sagging breasts. For Hutch, these were beautiful mementos of 3 healthy pregnancies that resulted in 3 wonderful children. They are now adults, with 2 having reached adulthood and the 3rd approaching it. He recognized that the immediate future would be difficult, but he was convinced that they would conquer all obstacles as a family. For him, this was the only acceptable consequence. And he developed his career by providing satisfactory solutions to complex challenges. Thursday morning, as Hutch fixed his tie in front of the bedroom mirror, he noticed Lorna looking out the bathroom. Is this normal? I wanted to remind you of tomorrow's promotion celebration. There will be a bar and dancing starting at 7 p.m., following 5 speeches. Dinner is at 8 p.m. I would be delighted if my hubby could be present. The address is shown on the district website. The familiar tones of a wife echoed in her voice again, so he put on his jacket. He responded, I will try. We have a dispute resolution conference at 4. Oh, it should happen quickly. I believe they are ready to make a deal. There's a lot of money there, but I'll try to get it in time for your performance. Her phone rang, and he turned to leave. Okay, Norm, Lorna said, retreating back into the bathroom to answer the phone. She wondered what was going on. We used to have to kiss each other before leaving the house. Ah well. 802 him shortly after 8 in the morning. Hutch went into the waiting room. Good morning, sir. Janet greeted him with her usual pleasant tone. No matter how horrible things appeared, she constantly sounded confident that things will improve. Good morning, Janet, Hutch said. Roz and Freddie stood up from their seats and said hi. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Roz. Hutch replied. Good morning, Freddie, before adding that all 3 of you had come in. In his office, he stood in front of his desk and turned to face Rose and Freddie. Janet remained at the door to hear if anyone entered the reception area. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the law. A school district is hosting a promotion celebration tomorrow night. Details are available on their website. Roz, Freddie, I need video and audio from this event. It does not matter how you do it. Sneak in with a camera or something else. As previously, I'll sign everything you need. I'll be there too. We have an important settlement conference at 4, so I will be a bit late. But I want to surprise her and attend her speech. So, what else is on our agenda? Rose took out the disc and stated that as of yesterday afternoon, all of their phones were infected. This evening, we overheard an intriguing conversation between Mr. Burns and what looks to be another school administrator, who is a close friend of his. She stood up and walked over to Hutch's CD player, which was tucked amid the law volumes. This will give us an indication of his plans, and I believe it will help us understand why she has been acting in this manner recently. A few seconds later, Ken's voice could be heard. Hey, Ken, have you had sex with her already? Ken responded, not yet, but my 6-month plan is on track. I will take care of this 43-year-old bitch in the coming days. I'm going to do it hard in her bed. As much as I desire. Another voice came from the speaker. I would have done this while she was a teacher, if it hadn't been for her spouse. In my perspective, he is capable of causing physical harm to the guy. Damn. I am not worried about him. I'll take this bitch any place for as long as I want, and leave her before he knows it. They both laughed. Ken went on to say that once I've had a few laughs with her, you're welcome to join in. Then another voice clarified who they were speaking about. That sounds wonderful. I think Lorna Jean's second times are better than most women's firsts. Ken responded. Oh. Without a doubt. I know I'll cherish every moment. Hutch turned off the record player and snarled. I've heard enough already. I go above and above what is required. If I had eaten breakfast this morning, I would most likely be vomiting right now. How are you gathering information about this jerk? Freddie said, going to. Sir, we already have the majority of the information. There's only a little remaining, and I believe everything will be ready by the end of the morning. He then gave Hutch a huge envelope from his briefcase. That is all we have at the moment. You have both a hard copy and a disc. Great. You two form an excellent team. I'll keep this in mind for future projects. Hutch commented, as he went over the contents of the document. This guy is 150 pounds and has never played sports. Academically normal, but he appears to have nothing except an inflated ego. However, in this situation, he may be really hazardous. However, if we fight him right now, we may appear to be utter idiots. Hutch flipped through Ken's financial documents and noticed his sole significant asset. So he has a trust worth $20 million. Is this his only asset? Yes, sir, Freddie responded. The next page describes the trust. That's the only aspect of his life he shares with Lorna. None of them are in school administration for financial reasons. Hutch stated as he switched to the next page and began reading about the trust and examining its positions. He didn't think anything exceptional. My liquidity is 4 to 5 times bigger, excluding my offshore holdings. He turned to face Freddie. Do you have the report on your computer? Yes, sir. Okay. Very good. I want you to look into his previous school districts, college, and even his high school. Find out which other ladies he had affairs with. It appears he has been doing this for quite some time. Yes, sir. I'll go to it right now. Freddie, said Rose. Yes, sir, she responded. I want you to go to the school district offices between 11:15 and 1130. Spend time in the employee lunchroom. You can find it by entering through the service entrance from the parking lot. It's always open throughout business hours. Follow the hallway to the end, then turn left. The room will be on your right. Learn what you can from the personnel. Also, I believe my dear wife is meeting Ken there for lunch. I doubt Lorna will recognize you. In addition, review your notes multiple times, especially in the evening. Okay, sir. I will take care of it and keep you updated. Eyes are finally accustomed to the dim lighting. Hutch approached the table where Paul Allen, the manager, and his wife were sitting. He expected to find his wife on his way to the table. He noted that there were just 3 couples on the dance floor. As Hutch neared the table, he noticed a man from one of the couples dancing, who was unusually close. He spotted Lorna's purse and shoes. Paul stood up and greeted him. When the men shook hands, the music stopped. Hutch turned to face the dance floor, just as Ken and his companion kissed. It was a lover's kiss. After their intense kiss, the duo turned around and proceeded towards Hutch. It was then that he realized the woman in the kiss was his wife, Lorna Jean. Lorna recognized her husband's tall, broad-shouldered figure as the dancers approached the table. Despite the dim lighting and the fact that there were already 2 pina coladas, he stood in her place, looking at her. Norman, have you arrived yet? She exclaimed, thinking, I hope he didn't see that kiss. Although this expression indicates that he observed. Why had I agreed to dance with Ken today? Obviously, Hutch replied with drink. Ken had managed to boost her ego, and it made itself felt. I didn't expect you to come. I didn't think you'd remember. That's obvious, Hutch responded dryly. How long have you been here? Asked Lorna. Long enough. Do you sleep with him, Norman? Mind your language. I have to work with these individuals, Lorna exclaimed angrily, raising her voice in an arrogant, condescending tone. However, she was well aware that her husband rarely swore. This signified that he was really angry. Hutch continued to stare at Lorna, saying, "Looks like you should have thought about that out there on the dance floor." He immediately recognized the tone and expression. He had seen and heard this numerous times from witnesses in court and during interrogations. They were constantly lying or attempting to hide things. He mimicked the same voice he used in court, which was so loud it could be heard throughout the ballroom. "Answer the question, Lorna. Do you sleep with this guy?" There was silence in the hallway. The orchestra went silent. Lorna was humiliated and couldn't say anything. Ken made a mistake by standing between Lorna and Hutch. "Please, Mr. Hutchinson, I initiated the kiss. Your wife is a lovely woman, but I tell you that there is nothing between us." Hutch was so enraged that, for the first time in his life, he felt out of control. Ken's actions and words just fueled the fire. "Have I contacted you? I don't even know you. Simply stand back." Ken remained motionless and attempted to repeat his error. "I simply wanted to help Hutch." A former college football defensive lineman stared at Ken. Then he did exactly what anyone else would do in his situation. "Now." Lorna glared at Hutch, furious. "Norman, this was totally unacceptable. You could have hurt him." She shouted and ran to Ken, followed Paul. Hutch turned around and made his way out of the ballroom via the hallway. Paul yelled out to him, "Norman, Mr. Hutchinson, may I see you for a moment?" Paul Allen, 6 feet tall and weighing no more than 60 kilograms, was an excellent administrator who despised controversy. He lacked the assertiveness required to deal effectively with circumstances like this. When Hutch hit the elevator button to the parking lot and turned to face him, Paul, breathing heavily, said, "I'll make sure Mr. Burns does not press charges. I really apologize for all of this." Hutch, scowled at him. "What charges will he bring?" When Paul realized he was the senior partner of one of the city's largest and most respected legal firms, he began to mumble. "An attack, most likely by Mr. Allen." Hutch responded aggressively. "Pay close attention to what I say. First, any assault charge will fall apart in the DA's office the instant it arrives." "No. Paul, this isn't your main issue. I am confident your school district has measures in place to prevent instances like this. So, I believe you appreciate that your district is currently facing enormous financial risks. There's also news. I'm sure the media will enjoy this occasion." Hutch failed to reveal that 2 of his men were in the room with cameras and would stay there for the remainder of the evening. The elevator doors opened. Hutch went in, and the doors closed, leaving Paul shocked and unsure what to say, or to whom. Lorna dashed out of the ballroom, nearly out of breath. "Where's Norman?" "He had just taken the elevator to the parking lot," Paul replied, turning around to rejoin the party. Lorna furiously pressed buttons, attempting to open the elevator. Paul knew that he was partly responsible for this issue, because he had avoided talking to Lorna and Ken, hoping for nothing more than friendship. However, it appears to have blossomed into something more. He planned to meet with them both in his office early next week to explore their relationship. He also recognized that how he handled this scenario might affect his job. He shuddered when he realized 3 board members were there at the party, as well as a powerful lawyer who suggested probable financial claims against the district. If he had to pick between his position and Lorna and Ken's, he knew what he would do. Soon after, Paul returned to the table. Lorna also approached him. "Have you found him?" he asked. Lorna sat down. "No. By the time I arrived at the parking lot, he had disappeared." She glanced at her watch. It was about 7:00 p.m., and I was the first to speak. "Right?" "Yes," Paul said, stepping up to approach the podium and introducing Lorna as the first speaker. 2 minutes later, she rose to take the speaker's position. It was the first speech she authored and prepared without her husband's assistance, but with his encouragement. She gave energetic presentations that educated and motivated students, staff, and administrators. This was the main reason she became involved in education. Hutch and Lorna clearly didn't need the money. However, while this speech may inform someone, it is unlikely to motivate anybody approaching the stage with anger, remorse, and humiliation in her hands. There were simply cards with bland, inexpressive wording. Neither she nor Ken were as good speakers as Hutch. Pulling up to her house, Lorna tapped the button above the windshield to open the garage door, allowing the car to move easily into place. She stayed seated in the car as the garage door closed. The clock on the dashboard indicated that it was just 9:15. She left the party in the thick of the festivities, but Lorna knew she needed to return home and deal with the matter. She had no idea what she would say or do, but she did know she had 3 pina coladas during and after supper. There are 2 more before the performance. She was an experienced social drinker who understood she shouldn't have been driving. However, the feelings of anger, remorse, and humiliation persisted. Now she was propelled forward by a combination of pride, drink, and adrenaline. Ken's brilliantly maintained and inflated ego, which eclipsed her actual principles, continued to prevent her from doing the right thing by her spouse. Lorna entered the house and noticed a Hutch in the living room. He stood in the center of the room, removing his jacket and tie and gazing at the pool. Lorna, hands on her hips, asked sharply, "What in God's name drove you to commit this act of violence?" Hutch turned to his wife and, observing her haughty, rebellious demeanor, looked straight at her as if she were a witness in court, saying calmly, "You still haven't answered my question. Why should I answer yours?" Lorna, drunk and enraged, exclaimed, "What the hell is the question?" Hutch remained calm, irritating her even more. "Do you sleep with this person?" Lorna stamped her foot and responded, escalating her voice. "Hell no. I have never cheated on you. But if you keep doing this, maybe I'll do it to spite you." Maintaining eye contact, Hutch shook his head side to side. "Well, looking at that kiss tonight, I'm not so sure." She crossed her arms over her chest. "You made me a laughingstock today. You embarrassed me in front of everyone I work with." "No, Lorna, I am confident you did an excellent job on this yourself. My support was entirely unnecessary." She instantly went on a rampage, talking too much. And then a statement came out of her mouth that she regretted as soon as she said it. "Maybe I don't love you anymore." The kiss he witnessed moved him. Her subsequent acts humiliated him, but because he loved his wife so much, these remarks affected him much more. He walked past her to the bedroom and stated forcefully, "If so, I cannot and will not stay in this house with you." Lorna went to the kitchen to make some coffee, and relaxed. She wondered if she and Hutch could sit down, get some coffee, and sort things out. She pressed the button on the coffee maker. She heard Hutch coming down the stairs from the kitchen. She noticed him at the garage door, carrying 2 suitcases. Stunned, she inquired, "Norm, what are you doing?" "I told you what I was going to do, and now I am doing it." He reacted by opening the door and flinging one of the luggage into the garage, while picking up the second. Her telephone rang. She retrieved it from somewhere and began to respond. Hutch glanced at her with distaste and muttered, "Dressed sexily as hell. But you still have a place to store the phone. And you didn't even bother to turn it off and speak to your own husband." With those words, he entered the garage. She answered his call. Ken was on the other end, checking to see if you'd arrived home. She interrupted him, "Yes, I'm home. We will talk tomorrow." She slammed the phone down and followed Hutch inside the garage. Ken laughed, envisioning her emotions. "Yes, I am having a heated argument with my husband. Without a doubt, I will soon be in her bed." Lorna entered the garage just as Hutch was getting into his car. "Norman, stop. You cannot leave me as much as I can," he explained as he closed the door, started the car, and opened the garage door. She was stunned by his persistence, and watched him drive away, until the garage door closed. Then she cried, "Go to hell. I can cope without you." But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. She stomped back inside the home, shouting into the emptiness, "Now I am Norman Hutchinson, a lawyer and accountant. I do not need you or anyone else." Lorna flung herself around the living room, berating her husband. When she realized that her words that evening had reminded her of the reality, she truly needed a husband. She sank on one of the sofas and passed out just after midnight. Lorna awoke to the sound of the front door opening, hoping that Hutch had returned. She dashed to the garage door, but I heard Katie at the entrance, saying goodbye to her partner. Lorna approached her and asked, "How was the date?" "Oh, he's okay. I'd like to meet someone who is as interested in me and my aspirations in life as he is in himself. I want to meet someone like Dad." "So, how was the big event?" "To put it mildly, everything went horribly. A complete failure." "Oh no. Mom, what happened?" "Well, I had a few of pina coladas on an empty stomach. Mistake number 1. Then your father arrived just in time to see me do something extremely stupid." She then placed the fingers of her right hand on her forehead and lowered her head slightly. "Damn. And then I managed to make everything worse." Lorna lowered her hand and proceeded. "Following that, your father experienced the only collapse of self-control I've ever witnessed. Then he departed to return home. I gave the worst speech of my life, while sipping 3 more pina coladas during and after supper. Then, realizing my mistake, I left the party early and returned home to speak with your father." Lorna paused, sighed, and resumed. "I am not sure how it happened, but your father and I had the worst argument we have ever had. But, heck, he injured and humiliated me during the party. And then I said things I shouldn't have spoken, and some I didn't even mean. Finally, he packed his belongings and departed." "Wow, Mom. What do you mean by left?" Still feeling the effects of her beverage, Lorna responded sharply. "What?" She said he gathered his belongings and fled. "What time is it now?" "It's almost 12:30. Will you go find him?" "Not now, honey. We both need to calm down. Now I'm concerned that whatever I ate in the evening will come back to haunt me. Lorna walked to the nearest toilet after saying these remarks. Saturday morning, Hutch drove to the interstate and pulled into the first motel with an illuminated rooms available sign. As soon as he entered the room, he turned off his phone. Emotionally drained, he removed his clothing and sank on the bed. After a sleepless night, he awoke at 8 a.m. and went to the shower, fully dressed. He dialed the phone, knowing that Lorna was probably still sleeping. To his amazement, he discovered 3 missed calls from his daughter, all made in the morning. He also got a call from a significant client in Dallas, Texas. It was an international company, currencies and commodities company that had recently entered the derivatives market, and received the phone number of Jim Stevens, CEO. Hutch promptly called back, and Jim said cheerfully, "Damn good to hear from you, Hutch. Thank you for calling back so promptly. I realize it's Saturday, and we should be spending time with our family, but Texas is experiencing statewide challenges. I'm not sure if it's unscrupulous staff or something worse, but I know your team can soon discover out what's going on. Yes, Jim. I can deploy a crew as early as the 1st of next week. Great, Hutch. But, I'd like you to come in today and tomorrow and review everything in person. Stay with me. I've got everything you need. Hutch, can you go to the airport in an hour and a half? I have already booked you on American Airlines." Hutch considered for a moment. Why not? This will allow Lorna and I to cool down. Then he said yes to Jim. "I will make my flight." "Great, Hutch. The reservation is booked online, so you may check in at the terminal in Dallas. My driver will meet you at the baggage claim. Thank you, Hutch. I knew I could rely on you." Hutch called his daughter right after he finished speaking with Jim. "Hello, sunshine. Dad, where are you? Why are you not at home? Mom mentioned a disagreement. Will you be back? Take your time, honey. Mom and I both made foolish remarks yesterday. She uttered things that deeply harmed me. So one of our large clients in Dallas was having some serious issues. They need me to come now and tomorrow. I believe this will allow Mom and I some time to calm down. After conversing with my mother yesterday, I think it is an excellent concept. But, Dad, you should read the morning paper or switch on the television. There is footage from the school district party." The newspaper headline: "A famous lawyer, his wife, and her lover sparked a scandal. And Dad, it appears that media have already gathered at our home. Crap. We urgently need to install a fence and gate at the entrance. Tell them not to remark. I need to travel to the airport. I will call you in the evening." "Okay, Dad. Bye." Later that morning, Lorna sat at breakfast, unconsciously spinning her coffee cup. She had no idea how out of character they were both acting. They generally spent the morning working on challenges like these together. But in 25 years, she had never given him any reason to accuse her of cheating. And she was entirely unprepared for his reaction in her drunken state. She was still unaware of the entire situation. She mumbled softly to herself. "Yes, Norm. Run off to your clientele for a few days. I am still upset with you." She then took up the phone and called Ken. "Hello, handsome," she said. "Hello, lovely lady. How are you? I had a bad hangover, and my hubby ran away yesterday. He currently has an unexpectedly crucial business trip to Dallas, Texas. We will be returning either tomorrow or Monday. I need to talk to someone. Has the press come to see you yet? No. What? They are already here. And it appears in the morning paper. They will not discover me. My apartment is registered with one of the family businesses in the district. I gave the address of a buddy. So, can I come to you and talk?" Lorna questioned hesitantly. "Certainly. I think it will be fine. I will meet you at the parking garage's entrance. This way, there's less possibility that someone will observe you walking in," he reasoned, inwardly adding, "Yes, honey, I got caught in my web, but we'll simply talk." Lorna sat for a few minutes after contacting Ken, reflecting on the issue. Then a notion hit her. You should not visit his residence alone. But she quickly brushed it off. "I am a grown woman. I will take care of myself." Katie returned to the kitchen and inquired, "How are you feeling, Mom?" "Significantly worse than last night. But I still feel like an idiot for drinking 1 or 2 glasses per night. And yesterday, I drank 5. I left early and am now suffering the worst hangover of my life. Listen, Katie, I'm going to see a friend now. I will be back for dinner. Can you care for yourself till then?" "Of course, Mom." "Whom are you going to?" "Yes, this is possible. Who got you into this?" "Katie. It's better that you don't know where I'm going." There was a knock on the door, and the doorbell rang simultaneously. "Most likely, these are reporters. Tell them not to remark. I'll go upstairs, take a shower, then depart." "Okay, Mom. At the very least, You and your father agree on this matter. There have been no press remarks. Hutch waited in the waiting area before taking his trip, pondering whether to unlock his laptop. At that point, his special phone rang. It was Roz. Hello, boss. Where are you now? At the airport. Waiting to board a flight to Dallas. One of our clients has major concerns, and they need me to fly in right away. I'll sort things out on site tonight, and tomorrow, then return tomorrow evening or Monday morning to establish a team. What have you got? Complete chaos. Boss. The media exaggerated yesterday's story. We filmed everything from two perspectives. We have already consolidated the records into a single file and forwarded it to you via email. Just one more thing. We caught your wife talking to Ken. She is currently on her way to his residence. He graciously provided us with all of the information we needed to pinpoint his location. Freddie had already left on his motorcycle to intercept and follow her. He has a GPS on his bike, so we can meet up there. Great. Rose, you and Freddie are awesome. Now, listen. Install as many audio and video equipment into his place as soon as feasible. Yes. Sir. Just one more thing. I emailed you something fascinating, after spending a couple of 2-hour lunch breaks in the cafeteria where your wife eats. I believe you will be curious. Oh yes, just one more thing. We have cameras and microphones in your living room and bedroom, so we can hear what you say to your wife. Yes, I understand. So, boss, as soon as she sits down next to this guy, she turns off his phone. I distinctly heard the distinctive sound of her operator turning off. Hutch felt an irritation boil inside him. He questioned himself. Who is this woman, and where is my wife gone? Boss? Are you still in contact? Yes. Rose. Here. This makes me freaking angry. Do you know why? Yes, boss. Just one more thing. Speak rapidly. Roz. First-class boarding has already been announced. Hutch said, scooping up his laptop and carry-on luggage. Okay. Freddie became serious about this yesterday. He discovered something in the school administration's computer system, and is now investigating further. It turns out that your wife's file for her current position was slightly edited after it arrived at county headquarters. He is currently reviewing the profiles of other prospects. It appears that the documents received at the district headquarters differ from those submitted to the school offices. Hutch approached the flight attendant and said, Wait a minute. Ross. When I entered the plane, he handed me his boarding card and I resumed our talk. Roz, please listen. Tell Freddie to keep digging until he discovers everything. Then it will dump everything to disk and delete any traces in the system. He knows how to tidy up. Also, Roz and Lorna should be completely unaware of this. I am confident she has nothing to do with anything. So we will keep her out of it. Taking his seat on the plane, he said, Roz is now coordinating the work with Freddie and our best specialists, as well as covert equipment installation. We have information on what they both drive. I want cameras and microphones installed in his residence, as well as surveillance on their autos. Double-check our server security. We're not sure what this guy or his associates are capable of. Oh, one more thing. Tell Freddie you're doing an excellent job. The CIA and FBI would be proud of you. Thank you. Sir. I will call you tomorrow morning. Oh, Roz. Inform Freddie that you're working on a special operation. Take as much overtime as necessary, and keep receipts for all personal costs. He knows the passwords for special permissions. Thank you. Sir, see you tomorrow. She returned to her car after asking reporters to remove 3 automobiles from her driveway. Lorna tried to call Hutch again. His phone immediately went into voicemail. It was switched off. She then called her daughter, Katie. If you hear anything from your father, please instruct him to deal with the journalists at the house. They blocked the entry and trampled the entire front lawn. Damn. It appears that we are currently the hottest subject in town. Feeding her ego on her way to see Ken. Lorna thought. Damn you, Norm, answer your phone or call me back. Even without you, I have become someone. It's not just your wife anymore. Yes, cool. Hutch. Hutchinson. I can do without you. As promised, Ken greeted Lorna at the underground garage entrance and directed her to her parking spot, right near to his car. This made it easier for her husband's team to place tracking beacons on both vehicles. Lorna, on the other hand, mistook her visit for nothing more than a conversation. She was naked on Ken's bed half an hour after she arrived. After a few more efforts. This did not bring Lorna any relief. They decided to eat lunch. Ken knew of a diner along a hidden road where no one would recognize them. Lorna approached the automobiles and said, Let's go on yours. I believe I broke away from the journalists who were pursuing me. But I'm not sure she actually dumped the press. But not Freddie, who followed her on a motorcycle, equipped with a GPS gadget. The data was transferred to Roz and two technicians in her minivan, as Ken and Lorna enjoyed sexual joys. The crew reviewed the designs for the entire residential complex, including the layout of his flat. Freddie hacked the building's security system and figured out Ken's code for the main door. They let the couple 10 minutes before going inside, as if they were local inhabitants. One of the techs used a specialized equipment to open Ken's door, as if he possessed a key. The second promptly hurried to the security system, only to learn that Ken had neglected to activate it before departing. Rose chuckled gently. "Jerk, you're simply making our jobs easier." But selfishness is precisely what causes such errors. On Monday morning of the first week, the pilot declared landing preparations. Hutch stared out the window, thinking of Lorna. He loved her more than life itself, and was unwilling to let her go. Yes, she fully understood what he said. He hoped that they would be able to get through it, and that the agony would lessen over time. What concerned him the most was betrayal. He read the email 4 times, listened to the audio, and viewed the video. Nonetheless, the question tormented him. What did he say or do that prompted her to do this? He overheard a phone discussion between Ken and the lawyer, Elizabeth Myers, about how, as part of her fee, she requested that another socialite prostrate before her. Hutch thought, only over my corpse. Over my corpse. And there will be no divorce. That's the least you can expect after I deal with that jerk Ken. Beth Myers is disbarred. Getting you out of town will benefit both the legal community and the mood in high society. Hutch hesitated after getting off the airport, taking out his phone before walking to get his luggage. The first person he planned to call was Jeremy Baker, the only buddy he had. He remembered their first encounter. When Hutch started law school at the University of Southern California, he moved into a dorm. When he entered his room, his neighbor was already present. Display a large smile, a loud voice, and an outstretched hand. Jeremy Baker. Hutch remembers shaking hands and beginning a friendship that would last for almost 30 years. Most possibly until death. As he saved Jeremy's phone number on speed dial, he recalled their soccer matches together. He is the linebacker who cut the throw for Jeremy, the running back. He pictured himself racing for a first down or bursting into the end zone. When the phone rang, he recalled their 4 years in the legal department at Army headquarters in Washington, when they met the young women who would eventually become their wives. Jeremy's phone number was very confidential, and the assistant who answered the phone immediately recognized who was calling. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hutchinson. Mr. Baker has now ended the call. He will be with you in a minute." Hutch. "Old man, how are you doing?" All he needed now was to hear Jeremy's cheerfulness. Always prepared to win. Voice. "It can be better, buddy, much better." "Has she submitted?" "Oh yes. We already have a copy at the office. They'll give it to you tomorrow." "Crap. Listen, Jeremy. First, there will be no divorce. Second, Ken Burns, I will deal with that little twit. Third, consider how we can get Beth Myers out of town and remove her license. I want to totally ruin them." "Okay, I'm in." Hutch. "We already had Roz and Freddie here. They brought all they had collected. I enlisted Isaac Zielinski, the head of my divorce department, and Dr. Ruth Watkins, our in-house psychologist." "Great. Jeremy. I appreciate that you got started right away. Although this doesn't surprise me. It's nice to know you're here to assist me sort through this chaos. I'd like you and your team to come to my office tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. I'll ask Janet to bring donuts and prepare coffee." "Yes. Not an issue." "Great." And involving a psychologist was the proper decision. He seemed to have inflated Lauren's ego significantly. "Jeremiah. I can't believe how arrogant she's become over the last 6 months." "Yes. Hutch. Jenny has been noting this for the past 3 months and mentioned it to me a few months ago. Don't we enjoy it when our opponents and witnesses play such tricks on us? Oh, we love it. But, Jeremy, I'm not even trying to find out what type of bitch this is. I am just interested in one thing. What has she done to my wife? And, most crucially, how can we reclaim the real Lorna? I don't want to drag this out for months or years. I want to get this done in a few of weeks, so we can heal wounds and rebuild connections, as much as we desire." "Yes, old man, I totally agree. Our history is too strong. You, Jenny, and Lorna are going to allow some tiny bastard and criminal wreck everything. See you tomorrow at 8 a.m. I'm in your office." Hutch hung up, wondering how much Jeremy was becoming to resemble his Southern belle bride. Perhaps he was born someplace in the southeast, rather than the Napa wine region of California. That evening, Lorna called her husband. She was now filled with guilt, but she was too proud and self-centered to admit it. Instead, she chose to go on the offense. Hutch answered the phone gently, like he did in many of his court cases, using a few words, but each one hit the mark like a stone in a glass house. This just made Lorna angrier. The discussion ended abruptly, with her slamming the phone and shrieking into the abyss. Damn you, Norman. You made me say something I shouldn't have. And, damn it, you heard everything. You've probably even written it down. Norman Hutchinson, a lawyer. I now have my own lawyer. From now on, we shall only communicate through her. But Lorna understood deep down that Beth Myers was not on the same level as her husband, or his best friend, Jeremy Baker. 8 a.m. Tuesday at Hutch's office. Once everyone had gathered, Rose ran in. You should hear this. I received this morning. The conversation occurred last night. This is Ken's interview with the man we've identified as James Worthington, the director of one of the secondary schools. 40 years old, married with 3 children. Overall, you should hear this. Ken is plotting against Lorna and Katie. She inserted the disc into the player and turned up the volume so everyone could hear. Ken began the conversation. Hello, Ken here. How are you? Hello, Kenneth. I am doing great. And you? Oh, Jimmy, that's fantastic, Ken exclaimed happily. I had sex with Lorna all weekend. Drew her here because the press was swarming her house. I will call you once she has completely trusted me. And the two of us will repeat everything. We'll film everything and make you watch it. This swiftly transforms them into women of easy virtue. No matter how noble or pompous they may be. Lorna comes right out of upper society. One of those arrogant do-gooders who believes their excrement doesn't stink. I grew up around them. Hell, my mother was one of them. I enjoy putting them in the earth, where they belong. James responded. Damn, Ken, I'm not sure whether to call you a sick bastard or not. But one thing is certain, I, too, am quite interested in being involved in this business. But, if we're talking about squealing like a pig, this is about Beth Myers. Lorna went home after we got her to file for divorce, and I immediately took care of Beth. James chuckled. I always questioned why you became engaged with her. However, I believe that having sex with your lawyer helped Lorna. Oh, Beth is not my type, but she is good in bed. Someday, I'll introduce you properly. Let's take her somewhere over the weekend. She prefers this. They both laughed. Then Ken proceeded. Hutch paces uneasily behind his desk. When the conversation finished, he spoke sharply. Only over my corpse, little bastard. Jeremy stood next to Hutch. I am with you, friend. Yes, Jeremy. We always supported one another, didn't we? I sincerely appreciate you and your team joining us in this venture, Hutch said, slapping his old friend on the shoulder before going to Dr. Watkins. Ruth, can you collect Ken's medical records swiftly and quietly? Beth Myers, too. Oh yes. Either late in the morning, or just after lunch. Wonderful, Ruth. Thank you. If this rascal infected my wife with something incurable, he'd die. And he won't die soon. I promise you that. Now, Freddie. Remember the medical malpractice case you were engaged in a few years ago? We defended the radiologists. One of his technicians made a mistake, causing this person to quit acting like a man. Yes, boss. I recall there being a lot of press coverage at the time. But I can't recall the doctor's name today. Even though I know where to look. Okay. Send me his file as soon as possible. If I recall properly, he was really delighted with the verdict. Jeremy grinned. Yes. Hutch. I recall this case. Then he added with a smile. Hello. Are you going to ask this doctor to make the same error as Ken? Hutch smirked for a second. First, we must reunite Lorna and protect Katie. Ladies and gentlemen, I need my wife home before the end of next week. 2, at most, Jeremy. Let's give Beth an answer tomorrow. And, Isaac, I know you're an expert at this. Tell her that if she takes this to court, she will not get a divorce. We shall rip her to shreds. Rose, thank you for catching it last night. He had suggested something previously, but now he was utterly insane. Ruth, a typical narcissist, chimed in. I wholeheartedly agree with this diagnosis. Thank you, Ruth. This makes him predictable. Hutch explained, returning to his seat at the table. But Lorna is an entirely different story. After 25 years of marriage, I've forgotten who she is. And, guess what? I do not even want to find out. He turned to face Jeremy. You studied the letters, films, and audio recordings. So bring a lawsuit against both the school district and Mr. Burns. I get it. Hutch. Jeremy nodded. By the way, my dear wife advised that if you need assistance, simply call. She misses her dearest pal. Okay. That is good. When we shatter this arrogant bitch, I believe the real Lorna will reach out to someone close to her. But not in our family. She has no one closer to Jenny. So when Lorna contacts her, it will be the first indication that we have broken her. Exactly. Jeremy agreed. Yes, gentlemen, I completely endorse it. This will be a strong indication that we have taken control of the situation. We've taken the strategic high ground, so to speak. Ruth stated that late Wednesday evening, week 2, as Ken entered his apartment, his cell phone called. He noticed Beth's name on the screen. "Hello, baby, how is my favorite lawyer?" "Ken? I honestly don't know what to say." "What do you mean? Beth? Did you do any research on Norman Hutchinson before sleeping with his wife?" "Not really. Just based on her statements, he appears to be a prominent business lawyer. I used to sleep with bigwigs and wives, and I am still alive." "That is what I thought." Beth sighed. "Come on, Beth. It cannot be that horrible. You received your 20,000 advance, correct?" "Yes. Ken, I've received an advance. And now, I got an answer to our case. It isn't what it says. However, that is awful enough. The key issue is who their official lawyer is." Ken gives a grin. "Come on, Beth. I assume nothing could scare you. Can be serious." The response came from Isaac Zielinski of Jeremy Baker and Associates. "Zielinski crushed me to smithereens in a handful of high-profile divorce cases. He is an expert at obtaining confessions from clients that they should not make. He made my clients appear so filthy that the entire town was talking about it. I, of course, objected. And the judge accommodated my protests, but the truth remained true." Beth stopped and then proceeded. "I will explain it more easily. Jeremy Baker is a successful lawyer who leads an exclusive group of subordinates known as the 90. Only those who have won more than 90% of their cases, within the last 3 years, obtain entry for the hundreds of lawyers in his firm. There are only 5 or 6 of them. Isaac Zielinski is one of them." "Okay. So what does this mean for us?" "In a nutshell, Ken, if Mr. Hutchinson does not want a divorce, Lorna will never receive one. It also indicates that I'm seriously considering returning her advance and instructing her to seek another lawyer. I also looked into Hutchinson and Baker's past. Trust me, it's best not to irritate them. You may already have done this. They have known each other since college. Norman is a former Trojans linebacker who has busted through defenses as a running back, and the runner was Jeremy Beth. I am not excellent at sports. What is this all about?" "American football. Kenny. University of Southern California. Trojans. They are California boys football studs who are also law students. They were also housemates for the duration of their studies." "Damn. Beth, let's talk about it." Kenny's voice quivered. "Okay, Kenny, I just need to finish a few things here. I will come to you in about an hour and explain why. You might want to temporarily switch to a rental automobile while everything is resolved." Ken thought of Lorna as he flipped through his letters. "Lady, you're becoming too pricey," flashed through his mind. He recalled the troubles that had occurred at his school as a result of media attention over the previous 3 days. Journalists were unable to find his home, so they attempted to obtain comments from him at school. Following Beth's comment, his attention shifted to the traffic citation he received on the way home. The cop feared he could change lanes too quickly. When Ken expressed his unhappiness, the officer increased the fine to address minor flaws with the car. But Ken was on his way to success, and his ego demanded it. Lorna invited Ken to spend the weekend with her on Thursday afternoon of the second week, following 2 weeks of loneliness. She got a weird sense in her heart, but she made the call nevertheless. As she approached her house, she realized Ken would need to be carried in covertly. Katie protested to her father about the large throngs of media in their region. Lorna was well aware that a single call from Hutch could bring up to 8 officers here during the day, to keep the paparazzi at bay on evenings when she couldn't sleep. She had up to 4 police officers patrolling the area in the early morning. Slowing down at the start of the driveway, she observed the sergeant commanding the guards on duty. The fund aided the brother of the first fallen officer. Hutch and Jeremy had established themselves 15 years previously. Lorna stopped at the gate and hailed the sergeant as he approached the car. "Hello, Peter. How are you?" "Oh, Lorna. We're working as usual. How are you?" "Oh, Pete, it could have been better or worse. I know one thing for sure. It appears that nothing I say or do improves the problem. So, just to let you know, my wife, Gary, and his wife are all praying for you and Hutch to reconcile." "Thank you, Pete. I sincerely appreciate it. How's Gary doing?" "His mood has improved dramatically since joining the wheelchair basketball team, and when Hutch sent 2 of his top lawyers to spice things up, the team had more room to play. Gary is over the moon. After defeating the student squad." "That's wonderful to hear, Pete. Look, if you need anything, like soda or coffee, use the restroom. Do not be shy, let me know." Lorna offered him a business card. "Nonetheless, I don't get any sleep at night. So don't be surprised if you see me here at 2:00 a.m. with a coffee thermos and glasses. Oh, the guys will be pleased." "Great. And, Pete, tell them how much we appreciate their help. This makes things much easy." I will inform you. Thank you. But you know, Pete, I am thinking. Is it actually necessary? All this media attention, as if one of us had killed someone? Yes, Lorna. I see what you mean. However, you are aware of how the media defines you. Hutch, as well as Mr. and Miss S. Baker, have made significant contributions to the community. Your hubby is successful. It has elevated you to a pedestal, and the press believes it is their responsibility to remove you from that position. Perhaps you are correct, Pete. Okay, thank you to you and the others on duty here. At least the weather didn't disappoint us. Pete laughed. Yes, that is for sure. See you later, Lorna. When she observed two reporters crossing the street in her direction, she pressed the gas and drove into the garage. She called her pal at the gossip editorial office as soon as the door opened sufficiently for her car to slide inside. Perhaps an exclusive interview might help to calm down these irritating journalists. Once inside the house, Lorna called Ken to change their arrangements. Now she would pick him up at his flat. Then she blended an entire jug of pina colada and walked to the pool. Taking off her shoes, she slid her tights-clad feet into the water, sat on the edge, and sipped an ice-cold cocktail, thinking to herself, Lorna Jean, what a mess you've caused. And what you're intending to do this weekend will only make it worse. So, why Lorna? Why are you doing this? Despite being ignorant of the hidden webcams throughout the house, including her bedroom and guest room, she went for it nonetheless. Full of vanity and self-confidence. Friday afternoon in the second week, hiding in Lorna's car, Ken Burns grinned, thinking, yes, baby, I will have sex with you in your own bed. However, he remembered his previous conversation with Beth Myers and asked himself a question. Is this actually a good idea? However, he couldn't resist the need to finish his search for Miss S. Hutchinson, an affluent socialite. Lorna waved to the officers as she entered the driveway. When two reporters noticed her, they dashed to the car, hoping not to pass up another opportunity like they had before. Lorna slammed on the throttle, as she had done previously, and slipped inside before the garage door fully opened. As the gate closed behind her, her eyes was drawn reflexively to the empty place where Hutch's car was usually parked many times. She had to get home before him. However, due to recent occurrences, this location has been uninhabited for the past 2 weeks. It was beginning to worry her. Was the decision to divorce correct? Were they in a hurry? God, she still adored her spouse as they entered the house. Lauren, I thought about the talk she had with Hutch that morning, as he had been doing recently. He stayed cool, calm, and collected as she resumed her regular tirade about him ignoring her and never being near the children. Everything he said was rational, reasonable, and logical, and so perfectly orderly. As with many other witnesses, his statements drove her insane. But this time, something was different. He actually screamed. And, as usual, she finished the discussion with cries, yells, tears, and aggressively slamming the phone. Before ranting into it, she continued. Damn you, Norman. I shouldn't even try to speak to you. I now have my own lawyer, who speaks your language. I will leave everything to her. But this is easier said than done. Lorna leads Ken to the refrigerator. Lorna took out 2 cans of Pepsi as they stood in the kitchen talking. Katie joined them. Lorna brought Ken to Katie, who instantly said, So you kissed my mother on the dance floor and started this whole mess. Ken remained mute, and Lorna responded indignantly. Young lady, we will not discuss the situation between your father and me, while Ken is here this weekend. Mom, isn't this the last person you should invite to spend the weekend? Lorna responded indignantly. This home is equally mine and your father's. I'll invite who I want, when I want, and for however long I want. Mom, you claim that Dad does not try to understand you, yet it is clear that you do not strive to understand him either. Dad will not grant you this divorce, and he will learn about your weekend guest. Unaware that their chat was being captured by a camera, Katie had no idea Hutch's crew knew Ken was in their house. Lorna was worried by her daughter's remarks. They made her realize that much of her husband's work required forensic auditing. She had a cold chill at the thought of Hutch just handing her enough rope to hang herself, along with Ken, and that nothing would ever be the same as it was just a month ago. That's enough, Katie. Anyway, I do not feel like cooking today. Lorna lamented that, unlike most of her friends, she had not hired a cook. However, until recently, she enjoyed cooking for her family. How about a pizza? A large one is sufficient for 3. Katie asks the cops outside if they want pizza and what they should put on it. Katie walked out of the door. Ken inquired, what did she mean? Lorna took a long sip from her soda can and replied, Don't worry about it. Let us just enjoy the weekend. But I thought, you have no idea who Norman Hutchinson is, or what he can do to you. But I'll bet he knows everything about you, Kenneth Burns. I can't help but think I'm dragging you down. Some flourishing but disastrous path will leave you severely injured, if not killed. She turned to Ken and asked, "Why don't you put your things in the guest bedroom? This will at least give the appearance of decency." "Yeah. Of course. Okay, Lorna, I will be right back," Ken answered and returned to the garage. Saturday in the second week. Lorna sat by the pool with a book in her hands, watching Katie, one of her friends, and Ken splash around in the water. She looked at Ken over the page, thinking, "We did this twice last night, and I didn't even like it." As a result, he became nothing more than a warm body in bed. At 2:00 a.m., I found myself in the kitchen again, pouring a glass of brandy, adding a couple of glasses of rum, and browsing the internet for stories. His universal sex must end. Maybe I'll give him a couple of lessons if I want. And tonight, we will both drink pina coladas and have a good time. Like those internet stories. But the questions remained in her head. What the hell did I expect from letting Ken into my home? Katie was correct. Hutch will find out, if he does not already. She whispered to herself. It was no surprise to me that Norman was attracted to Jeremy, and it was also no surprise that Jeremy hired his finest divorce specialist. But I am astounded at the efficacy of their efforts. Her thoughts drifted to Katie. She was as clever and attractive as her mother. Kathy also has what her father called natural lawyering skills. Her vocabulary is excellent, and she can read between 1 and 500 words per minute. Meanwhile, Ken snuck glances at Lorna, who was laid out on a beach lounger near the sea. With a toned physique, alluring curves, and beautiful legs. This is exactly the type of woman that piqued his interest. However, an inner voice informed him that after the scandal, he should have halted everything with that kiss at the school district celebration. In the gossip pages, he was characterized as a machismo, attempting to undermine one of the most solid marriages in the city's upper class. Ken believed that many journalists and broadcasters were simply terrified of this Hutch. Also, what did Katie say yesterday afternoon? Is he in serious trouble? No, not Ken Burns, the womanizer. Has she become more than just a prize for me? Am I falling in love with her? But his inner voice kept telling him that he shouldn't have come here for the weekend. However, the temptation to drag her into the marriage bed was overwhelming. Unlike other ladies, he felt very comfortable with her. Lorna and Ken, looking depressed, staggered up the stairs to their beds around 11 p.m. Thanks to deliberately installed webcams and listening equipment, none of this missed the observation of the Hutch team. Ken entered the bedroom with Lorna giggling and thought, "Yeah, she's pretty drunk." What Ken didn't realize was that Lorna, a social drinker, was drinking steadily all evening. Of course, there was one recent instance in which she was unable to manage her drinking. Lorna, on the other hand, understood how to learn from her mistakes, and was determined not to do them again. Lorna laid on her back, wondering what the hell just happened. She shook her head and murmured, "Don't sleep, Ken." But he did not move. Lorna shifted Ken to one side of the bed, took the blanket off the other, turned him over to that side, and covered him. She put on her panties and nightgown, took the blanket from the foot of the bed, and lay down next to him. She attempted to sleep, but she couldn't get herself away from her thoughts. Staring at the ceiling, her anxiety over the upcoming Sunday morning did not let up. It's 2:00 in the morning. Sunday in the third week. Lorna slipped into a big quilted robe with matching slippers, a mild headache settling in and remorse taking over her heart and mind. She then staggered into the master bathroom to obtain some Alka-Seltzer. Feeling much better, she entered one of the bedrooms with a view of the front yard. After spotting 2 police cars, she noticed 3 police officers and 2 media trucks across the street. Now entirely sober and conscious, she walked down the stairs, thinking, "Don't these journalists have anything better to do than bother us in the kitchen?" Lorna turned on the 30-cup coffee machine while preparing coffee. She glanced in the pantry and discovered a cake mix aptly titled, "Coffee Cake." After reading the instructions, she discovered her convection oven would complete baking the cake around the same time the coffee was ready. After putting the cake in the oven, she took out 2 cans of coffee and a picnic basket, holding the coffee in one hand and the cake, cups, cream, and sugar in the other. Lorna proceeded down the officer's driveway, unaware that her son Randy's car was parked on the far side of the garage. He arrived from West Point after Lorna and Ken had gone upstairs to the master bedroom, and before the police guard changed. As a result, the current shift of officers had no idea who had parked their car in the garages. She approached a group of officers, recognizing one of them was a woman, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I will bring coffee and goodies." She peered across the street and sighed a sigh of relief when she noticed no activity among the news trucks. After everyone had had their cup of coffee and piece of cake, Staff Sergeant Steve Jenkins, the officer in charge of the group, inquired, "How are you doing, Mrs. Hutchinson?" recognized him. Lorna responded, "Oh, Steve, you can call me Lorna. Regarding your query, Steve, like trash. Over the last 2 weeks, I've said and done everything wrong, at the wrong moment, and for the wrong cause. I'm scared I messed up our 25-year marriage. I honestly don't know who I am anymore. Oh, I messed things up so severely that I don't know where to begin to fix it." Steve walked closer to Lorna and said in a soft but forceful tone, "Lorna, I've known you and Hutch for many years, and it's clear that you were meant to be together. I think if you swallow some of your pride and make the first move, he will meet you halfway." Lauren. I took a long sip of her coffee and replied, "Yes, Steve. I believe you are correct. I will seriously consider your words." It was clear that filing for divorce was a hurried and poorly considered decision. She shifted the conversation, asking the officers about their wives, girlfriends, and boyfriends. Around 3 p.m., she left the remaining coffee for the officers and returned to the guest bedroom to sleep. Thus, she took the initial step towards Hutch, transferring the focus from herself to him. However, Lorna was expecting the worst in the next week. Later on Sunday morning in week 3, Lorna walked downstairs to the kitchen at 8:30 a.m. after several hours of sleep and a long shower, to prepare coffee and start breakfast. The first thing she saw when she walked into the kitchen was that someone had already made coffee. She looked toward the dining area near the bay windows of the house's tower and saw the person she didn't want to see right now. Her second child. "Randy, what are you doing here?" Randy, clad in his cadet uniform, rose up and responded in the same manner and tone as his father. "I spoke with Dad and then Katie, and I didn't like what I heard. So I returned home to figure it out for myself. Tim could not have escaped, else, he would have joined us." "What is going on, Mom? Why in the hell did you decide to file for divorce?" "You just don't get it, Randy," Lorna stammered. "Mom, I'm no longer a small guy. I am in my 3rd year at West Point. I have a 3.8 GPA, and am a cadet captain. I finished my first season on the Army varsity football team after 2.5 years. I have followed a rigid code of honor. My parents established in me a value system that has helped me become who I am today, and who I hope to become in the future. Mom, I believe I understand. So, why the divorce?" "Oh, Randy, I felt like a single mother so often. Your father missed Katie's last open class since she had so much going on. Mom, I have no doubt that in some ways you were the best parent. Even your father admits this. You were always present for our open classes and other events. But when we needed him, he was always available. Who taught Tim and I how to block, receive passes and tackle? Who taught the 3 of us to drive, and then made time to accompany us to our driving test?" Despite the fact that she lacked the patience and willpower to teach someone to drive and was about to give up, Lorna whispered quietly, though. "However, it appeared to me that I was doing everything alone. Mother, when I was 14 I sat in the living room and listened to the Army recruiter speak with you and Tim about West Point. Then I determined this was where I wanted to go. And I wanted to be an Army officer. The next day, I rode my bike to my father's office. What was there? 5 or 6 miles. His secretary said he was being interrogated for something very serious. But she promised to tell him. I was waiting for him in the office. He followed her out and inquired how I got there. I stated I came by bike. He said that since it was so important to me, we should talk. He brought me into his office, dialed the number, and activated the speakerphone. It was the State National Guard's commander, who had graduated from West Point. My father helped me all the way to filing a successful application. That year, more than 30,000 people applied for 1,200 West Point places. Dad still supports me. And Tim, you're fully aware that he was instrumental in getting him into Harvard for his MBA. His encouragement helped Katie get into Harvard Law School. And, you know, Mama, he was always there when it truly counted." Before Lorna could react, Katie entered the kitchen. She wore a bikini and an unbuttoned beach top. "Good morning, Mom. How's your breakfast? Will I have time to swim?" She then noticed her brother Randy. "How long have you been here?" Now he stands with his hands on his hips. Randy answered his sister. "I came around 1 in the morning." He then turned back to Lorna. "Mom, Dad went for a few days, and you allowed your daughter to walk around like this? This bikini covers nothing at all. Katie, why not just do without it? Swim naked, like a true call girl." "Randall, don't talk about your sister like that," Lorna exclaimed before anyone else could respond. Ken entered the kitchen, murmuring plaintively, "Is there anything to relieve a hangover?" With the dinette raised 6 to 8 inches, the broad-shouldered, 6'3" Army linebacker appeared to be a giant in comparison to Ken, who stood 5'11" and weighed 150 pounds. At a school district party, Ken used a few beers and an inflated ego to get between his father and mother. Today, however, He had a severe hangover, and his ego was once more injured. After failing to impress Lorna, he was in such a state that he couldn't face any conflict, especially with the massive West Point cadet who was staring at him after scrutinizing Ken. Randy asked, "So, Mom, is this what you're sleeping with right now, and in your marriage bed, Randall?" Lorna yelled. "We don't express ourselves that way in this house, and you're fully aware of this. Especially when we have guests." Mother Randy raised his voice. "I simply call them by their appropriate names. Didn't you choose too much?" He looked at Ken again. "You've been enjoying high-quality steak for the past 25 years. And now I've decided on a fast food burger. To me, this is the conduct of a call woman." Katie responded harshly. "Randy, you can't talk about our mother like that." Randy stared at his sister, and then at his mother. Then, like an enraged army general, he declared, "It is historical fact that she is our mother. However, only women sleep with other men in their married beds. And you, dear sister, are dressed as one of them. Our code of honor prohibits me from being in the company of people like you. So I'll pack my luggage and return to West Point." Following these statements, he exited the eating area and went to his room. Lorna put her elbows against the kitchen counter, buried her face with her hands, and sobbed. Ken turned to Kathy and stated, "I think it is time for me to leave. Could you take me home?" He checked his pocket to ensure he had his wallet and keys. Then he looked at Lorna. "Lorna, I will call you in a few days." But she didn't respond, continuing to sob. Her son arranged everything in its proper place. Randy's words struck Lorna's ego like a torpedo. His deeds penetrated her heart like an arrow. Katie took her purse, put on a big coat and shoes, and told Ken, "Okay, let's go. You can come back for your belongings later." She realized that the best solution now was to simply get Ken out of the house. After a few minutes, Lorna came to her senses and realized there was no one else in the house. She put on a one-piece swimsuit and went for a swim, like she normally does when she's anxious. Lorna rose early on Monday, the third week, after a lonely and sleepless night. Her only entertainment all night was delivering a jug of coffee and donuts to the 2 officers on duty about 2:00 a.m. She entered the shower, exhausted. Lorna was mentally running over her daily routine as a team of specialists worked on revamping a significant component of the elementary school curriculum, and she was scheduled to present their proposal to Paul Allen at 8 a.m. MSHE wanted to arrive at the workplace early, so she could check the document again before the presentation. She left the house before Katie even woke up, because such an important day required an early start. Lorna sat in the Director of Education's office, watching while Paul reviewed her presentation. He finally closed the pamphlet and glanced at her. "Lorna, I am unable to submit this to the council tonight. There are difficulties here. I would rather return the document to you now than have the council reject it in front of everyone. This is what I will do. I will write out my comments and return the documents to you this afternoon. Then you'll have 2 weeks to remedy it. Lorna, I understand that you are going through a hard moment in your personal life, but I was hoping you could keep work apart from your personal problems. Based on this presentation, you didn't. What's up with you and Ken Burns?" Lorna straightened up in her chair. "It is over. Paul. I allowed things to escalate well beyond their proper limits. But, as of yesterday, that was it. I have not chosen what to do about the divorce yet, but I will keep you updated. And, absolutely, I will try not to combine work and personal life." "Okay, Lorna. I appreciate it. I will return the materials to you as soon as possible." Standing up, Lorna mumbled, "And I assumed that everything had been considered. Okay, let's figure it out." Her cell phone rang as she was leaving Paul's office. It was a phone call from her daughter's school until 2 months ago. Lorna was one of the assistant directors there. A recognizable number came on the screen. Her former work phone. She responded. "Lorna. Hutchinson. Lorna." A familiar voice was heard. It was Claire Jensen, her former secretary. "Yes, Claire. How can I assist Lorna? We have Katie here." "What, is she injured? What happened?" "Mrs. Schaffer, her first period teacher, sent her here. She is breaking the dress code. Can you come to fetch her?" "She's what?" "Lorna, you should see it for yourself. If you arrive within a half hour," Claire said. "We can do without an entry in her file." Lorna exhaled deeply. "I am already on my way. Driving up to school." Lorna remembers being a member of the commission that tightened the appearance criteria for students, instructors, and administrators. As she entered the reception room, she noticed her daughter standing against the wall. Katie wore short shorts and a tight sleeveless tank top that exposed her midriff. Lorna placed her fists on her hips and nearly yelled, "What they do? Catherine? What are you calling this? Was your brother correct?" Katie flushed and lowered her gaze. Claire got up from the table. Lorna, your successor, George Brown, is currently attending a meeting. If you take Katie now, change her clothes and bring her back to class. Judy Schaffer consented to turn a blind eye, but only this time after noting Katie's mid-thigh length jacket. Lorna responded quickly, put on your jacket immediately and we'll get out of here. Then he turned to Claire. Thank you. I owe both you and Judy. Claire smiled. It's okay, Lorna. I was in your position. But that is not all. Our straightest student failed every midterm last week. She currently has a maximum of January 92nd 0 points. What? Lorna yelled. It was already too much. She turned to face Katie. Quickly get into the automobile. We need to have a serious conversation. For several blocks, the young lady remained silent in her car. Lorna then said, explain why you came to school looking like this. You understand the rules. You're aware that your mother contributed to the writing. Okay, Mom, when you let me buy that bikini, So, you let me buy that bikini. Lorna thought, good God. What about examinations? She asked. You know your father worked hard to get you into Harvard Law School. Mom, with all this nonsense that's been going on over the past 2 weeks, I simply didn't want to learn. Lorna swerved into her yard, waved at the cops, and squealed her brakes as she came to a halt in the garages. Turning to Katie, she remarked, after what happened yesterday morning, I can't believe you'd do something like that. She waved a hand at Katie's clothes. Oh my gosh, this attire. Now head upstairs and change into something decent and quick. Perhaps we can get you back to school before the conclusion of the first period. I'll be here waiting. While she waited, I recalled Katie's statement about her father assisting her in getting into one of the best law schools in the country. As she went home that afternoon, she realized that if she truly wanted to reconcile with her husband, she'd have to eat many of her own comments. Lorna spoke nearly aloud. Fortunately, the meeting with the coaches went well. I'm glad the day is gone, and perhaps the rest of the week will be better. Not so, Lorna. Things will get far worse before they improve. Later that day, Lorna phoned her daughter. Where are you now? 3 teachers permitted me to retake the midterms, and the rest assigned me more work. So I'm presently at the public library, sketching out a plan for how to accomplish this very extra. I get it. Katie. Well done. About dinner. Purchase something for 2 on the way home. Do whatever you want. Less from me? Okay, Mom. Just one more thing. I'm sorry for Randy's words and actions. Oh, Katie, you don't need to apologize. We both knew he was correct. I'll have to fix everything myself and get your father home. But, honey, right now, I can't imagine how things will turn out. Mom, you will see. I'll be home in about an hour. Okay, Katie, I'll see you. Lorna then gathered Katie's bikini, as well as the swimsuit she had purchased for herself, and placed them into the Goodwill box. She stood motionless with a small smile, recalling how much excitement she and Katie had produced when they tried on bikinis together. She then changed into a one-piece swimsuit, thinking as she headed to the pool. At the very least, it conceals the stretch marks on my tummy and provides more support for my sagging 43-year-old breasts, while Katie was standing in line at the KFC drive-thru. She called her father Daddy. Hello, treasure. What happened? Have you spoken to Randy? Oh yes. As soon as he left our yard on his way back to West Point, he called, angry and disappointed with his mother and sister. Hutch did not inform his daughter that Freddie had brought a DVD with recordings of Ken and her mother from Saturday night, as well as recordings of the scene with Randy on Sunday morning. I'm very sorry, Father. I also need to tell you something. I did something stupid at school this morning. I know Mom will never tell you about it, but someone else might, and at the wrong time. What is it? Katie. Hutch inquired, encouraged by his daughter's desire to communicate openly with him, whether her mother had done the same. Perhaps the events of the past month could have been prevented. Katie explained to her father how she dressed for school that morning and how she failed her midterm examinations. But she said that her mother spoke some sense into her about clothes, and the professors are assisting her with everything. I see, treasure. It appears that you have just succumbed to all of the hype. It appears that you are already working to improve your grades and get them back on track. How is Mom doing? Oh, Daddy. This is especially true since Randy mentioned everything on Sunday. She's simply not herself. I do not think she slept at all last night. Every day at around 2 a.m., she takes coffee to the police officers in front of our house. She says she wants to mend things and get you back, but she has no idea how or where to begin. Hold on to your prize. Everything must come to an end shortly. Remember that I adore you and your mother. I love you, too, Daddy. We will call you later. Tuesday m. Week 3. Lorna called Jennifer Baker shortly after getting at work and suggested they meet for lunch. Jenny is a flexible stay-at-home mom. So they decided on a cafe near Lorna's work. Lorna then poured herself into her job, preparing the presentation and answering Paul's inquiries. Then I went to meet Jenny for lunch. Both women were born in Georgia to wealthy families, and when they were alone, their speech became gently Southern. Jenny was already seated at the table when Lorna arrived. "Hello, Jenny. How are you doing?" "I am fine. But you, Lorna Jean, appear to be doing really poorly." Lorna sat down at the table and whined. "Oh, Jen, I haven't understood anything recently. Maybe it's a midlife crisis. Over the last few weeks, I've managed to completely destroy our marriage and entire family." She hesitated, unsure whether to tell Jenny about the situation with Randy on Sunday or the narrative with Katie on Monday morning. But, because Jenny was her best friend, she told her about what happened. "Okay, honey, over the last 30-odd years, we've been able to talk issues like this and avoid the problem you're in now. But, Lorna Jean, you haven't called me in over a month, and now you're sitting upside down. The hardest part is that I'm going to tell you something you don't want to hear. But you have to, because it's your fault." Lorna was stunned and exclaimed, "Jenny, what are you talking about?" When she left, the waitress came over to take her order. Jenny continued, "I'll say it briefly. I talked with Hutch last Saturday. He knows you're sleeping with that guy. How often, and where?" Lorna gasped and questioned, "What do you mean? How does he know this, Lorna? You are aware that Katie speaks with him on a frequent basis. And do you realize what the employees in your husband's company are capable of?" Hutch, of course, brought in Jeremy, as well as the head of the family law department, to protect his interests. Jeremy also mentioned one of his psychologists. Hutch hired a young lawyer and a young forensic financial investigator. They're both computer gurus. Is the financial auditor a woman? Is she looking a touch nerdy? Yes, it appears so. They refer to her as Mrs. Colombo since no one takes her seriously. Oh, no. I know numerous people that work for Norma, and I believe I recognize her. She was shooting the school district celebration when everything went wrong, and she has spent the last week hovering around the cafeteria. Oh, damn. Jenny. I bet she jotted down every word. Ken and I stated this to each other over supper. But, Lorna, things are considerably worse. Significantly bad. How can things be much worse, Jim? So, where can it be any worse? Barbara Johnson is the foundation's public face. She and I are really close pals. Of course, I consider her a good friend. So she called me on Sunday evening, slightly upset. She stated that she did not wish to break up someone else's family, and was deeply sorry that this occurred. She's terrified to speak to you. She's worried you'll simply bite her head off. Lorna sat up straight in her chair, already guessing what she was saying, and squeezed out with difficulty but control. Oh, Jen. Barb is a beautiful lady. Lorna thought. This is not like me. I know she had no males after her husband was killed in the firefight, 1.5 to 2 years ago. I am frightened to ask, but go ahead and lay it out. Jenny peered directly into her closest friend's eyes. Nobody wanted to hear what was about to be told. Hutch ran into Barbara at the supermarket's checkout counter. She questioned why he was purchasing these particular things. Hutch replied that he was tired of eating at restaurants. Then she asked him to her home for dinner. Lorna, I apologize for having to tell you this, but I believe I am the only one who can and should say it now. And certainly, it is Lorna Jean's fault. Lorna nearly choked as she muttered, expecting to hear the worst. Jen, it's entirely my responsibility. How could I be that stupid? Okay, let me know what occurred next. Jenny took a big breath and blurted out. Bob and Hutch had a glass of brandy after the boys had gone to bed, followed by a second and third. One thing led to another, and they ended up going to bed together. Lorna gasped and felt like she was about to pass out. Oh no, and then moaned. Normie, I can't stand it. I really need you. Please come back. I cannot live without you. Oh God. How do I put an end to this nightmare? Maybe wake up or perish. When their lunch arrived, Lorna was able to pull herself together a little as the waitress walked away. She continued, almost whispering. Jen, I need to stop this. Make everything come to an abrupt stop. Just fix it anyhow. I need Norm back. I really need him. I simply can't live without him. I have not slept since Saturday. Prior to it, I slept for no more than 2 hours. And I woke up with nightmares. The worst I've ever seen. But I'm not sure what to do. I am terrified I will lose him, and then I will die. I know I'll die. Jenny placed her hand on Lorna's wrist and spoke quietly. Lorna, Hutch acknowledged to me that you had deeply hurt him. However, he also stated that he still loves you and that there will be no divorce. She took a mouthful of the sandwich and then continued, taking another one. You compelled him to do something I had never anticipated of him. I've known Jen for years, and I still love him. Oh my God, How much I love him now. I can feel how painful it is. I wonder how much grief I caused him. Oh, damn. Imagine my hubby sleeping with another lady. And even with Barbara. Oh, God. You and I both know she does not sleep with just anyone. God, this is twice as painful. Surely, they had a fantastic time together. She said something scarcely audible. Oh, Normie. I am sorry. Jenny then said, I need to tell Norm this, but I'll tell you to please no one. When I couldn't sleep, I sat on the internet and read a number of articles from various websites. Most of the cheating wives in these stories repeat the same thing. They claim that things are better with their lovers than with their wives. Their virtues are superior, and they understand how to give pleasure. All of the women describe wild, mind-blowing experiences, and everyone insists that it's all sex. So, Jenny, it isn't like that with Ken. He's not as big as Norm, and he has no idea what needs to be done to keep me pleased. Jenny grinned. I understand. Your secrets are safe with me. But, in general, Lorna, it is apparent that you are not one of those who can fool their husbands. You are an excellent wife, mother, and social activist. Nevertheless, cheating on your husband is not about you. And your choice of lovers is also improper. You were simply not born to do such things. And I am the same. So, let's eat. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Jenny then stated to Lorna, I think you just need to go to him and crawl on your knees, beg his forgiveness, and ask him to come back. I bet he'll meet you halfway. Lorna brushed away tears with a napkin. Yes, I guess you are correct. Or rather, now I know for certain that you are correct. The previous few nights, I've gotten up at 2:00 a.m. to deliver coffee and cakes or donuts to the police officers who keep journalists away from the residents. The shift manager knows all four of us well and advises us to swallow our pride, as he puts it. Jenny smiled. Yes, I believe this is the only way things will work out. Although, I believe, the first step is to withdraw the petition for divorce. He refuses to offer it himself. So, why are you wasting money on this cheap lawyer? Lorna called the office after lunch to say she was not feeling well and would be taking the rest of the day off. In actuality, she felt horrible not because of her illness, but because her husband had spent the night with another lady. It took her a long time to reach home, and she was constantly wiping away tears. Jenny was correct. This was entirely her responsibility, and she completely realized it. Lorna cried for an hour after she returned to the room. She swam in the pool around 2 p.m. before going to the kitchen to make coffee. After that, I showered and changed clothes just as Lorna was about to have her coffee. The doorbell rang. She opened it and saw a man dressed in a suit holding a briefcase. Jeremy. Oh, are you certain you can come here without my lawyer? Don't worry, Lorna. I am not Hutch's lawyer. And I am not here for your divorce. I arrived to discuss additional matters that had been filed as a result of this divorce, where you are an important witness. I noticed Lorna step back to let him into the house. Come inside. Closing the door behind him, she said, Jeremy, I'm glad you came by. I ate lunch with Jenny today. I desperately need someone to help me right now. Will you have some coffee? I just cooked it. Yes, Lorna. Thank you. Black will suffice. And, yeah, Jenny called me following your meeting. Lorna motioned him to a table in the kitchen. He sat down, opened his briefcase, and took out 2 folders of documents. She recognized them as legal documents and put a cup of coffee in front of him. Lorna sat down opposite him and asked, Jeremy, what do you have there? After a sip of his coffee, Jeremy responded, Let's start Lorna off with a lawsuit against Mr. Kenneth Burns. He handed her one of the folders and proceeded to intervene in marital affairs, which led to divorce. Lorna gasped after reading a few chapters. Jeremy leant in near Lorna and said, $2 million. We discovered that his grandfather established a $20 million trust for him. Working in school administration is simply a cover for him to get closer to women like you. We discovered 7 others, whom he transformed into, roughly speaking, sex devices. He intended to do the same thing with you. Lorna was still staring at him in shock, and her condition was exacerbated by what she discovered at lunch. Jeremy, where are you? How do you know all of this? Lorna. Jenny's comments came back to Lorna, and she still couldn't come up with an explanation. He proceeded. Webcams and bugs were installed in this house prior to Monday's school party. After the celebration, they were moved to the master bedroom, guest bedroom, living room, and family room. There are 2 in the kitchen area. So we also have complete film of Randy's scene from Sunday morning. She gasped but remained mute. Jeremy added, that same Saturday after the party, we wiretapped your mobile and office phones, as well as Ken's mobile and work phones. The home phone had already been wiretapped. We won't be able to use much of this in court, but we're not required to. We also acquired access to your email over the past 7 months, as well as Ken's email. We knew you were going to file for divorce on Sunday, before Beth had time to finalize everything for you. Lorna covered her mouth with her hands as Jeremy continued inexorably. When you went to Ken's condo, you were stopped by one of Hutch's people on a motorcycle. Then they installed trackers in both of your vehicles. When you went out to dinner, they installed webcams in both his living room and bedroom. Lorna lowers her head. Oh, God. Lorna, you should have guessed and warned him. Your spouse and I play in the major leagues, and here we are just practicing on cats. A bit. Lorna's tears flowed down her cheeks once again, and she squeezed out Jeremy while scarcely breathing. What can I do to get it back? I am madly in love with him. I really need him. Oh, God. Help. Jeremy, help me. Please, I ask you. Jeremy spoke with a more forceful tone. We'll get back to this later. He pushed another folder to her side of the table and stated. We now need to discuss this lawsuit. Lorna, already appalled by what she had heard, gasped again when she realized the defendant was the school district and the plaintiff was her husband. She nearly had a stroke when she saw the size of the claim. She spoke out loud. 7.5 million. Looking at her with a little self-confident smile, Jeremy remarked, That's correct. The county offers numerous options, and I intend to take use of every one of them. But Lorna, you, and Dr. Allen are the primary witnesses. In any event, I am confident that you three will be removed from the school administration. He took a sip of coffee and proceeded, Lorna, listen to me carefully. Any of these lawsuits might devastate you. So much so that you will be ashamed to leave your house. But I still haven't brought them to court because Hutch refuses to sign. He still loves his wife. To be honest, I'm not sure why, but he really loves you. If that occurred to me, what happened to him? With my high self-esteem, I wouldn't be able to live with it. Jenny knows this. However, Hutch never acted out of ego. And that is a fact. Lorna sat there shocked, understanding that she had intended to utilize her friendship with Ken to learn how to communicate better with Hutch and repair their marriage. But it had turned out to be a failure. She realized how badly she had made a mistake. She appeared to be stranded in the mud, which gradually turned into quicksand. Her breath seized in her throat, and she almost missed what Jeremy replied. But you do have one edge. Hutch believes that in many respects, you were the victim of this scenario. However, his remarks offered her some optimism. Through tears, she looked at Jeremy and said plaintively, Jeremy, you are his best friend. His only real friend. Help. Thank you, Jeremy. Please help. Okay, Lorna. I'll do what I can when I see it. You need to take 4 steps. First, remove all of your bedroom's furnishings, strip the walls, repaint them, replace the carpets, and update the portraits and photographs. Purchase new furniture, and move the bed to another wall. I know a contractor that can accomplish everything in one day. Second, phone your doctor and be tested so you can have a clean bill of health to show Hutch. Third, prepare a letter of resignation from the school district. Lorna let out a gasp, but he kept going. Finally, go to him on your knees and ask him to take you back. Literally crawl and beg, scream, beg, threaten, or whatever. And I am confident he will take a step towards you. But listen carefully, Lorna. This will most likely bring him back to you and help you recuperate. However, this will not happen overnight and would require significant work from all sides. Lorna quickly took her phone from her handbag and dialed her doctor's number, which she had saved on speed dial. I scheduled an appointment for the next morning. Lorna ended the conversation just before Katie arrived home from school. She heard Katie say hello, Mom. Oh, Uncle Jeremy. The girl hugged him. What are you doing here? Jeremy answered by hugging her back. I'm assisting your mother in reversing her downward spiral. Katie hugged him again. Thank you. She desperately needs assistance right now. After that, she turned to her mom. How are you, Mom? Lorna stood up, placed her phone in her purse, and remarked, It is better now, dear, much better. Jeremy provided me a plan of action, which I aim to carry out. And you and I shall go straight now to pick out new bedroom furnishings. She hugged Jeremy again. Thank you for being such a great buddy. Tell Jenny I will call her. Perhaps we can have lunch together again next week. Of course, Lorna. I believe she will only be happy. She wants to help both of you. What should you do with that guy, Ken? Katie quickly blurted out. We still have his belongings from last weekend. Lorna stood there, unsure what to say. Then Jeremy said, Does he live far away? 20 minutes away? Lorna responded and then called him. Say it is over. Allow him to take his clothes. I guarantee he'll arrive in less than 18 minutes. Lorna dialed the phone. Then she turned to Katie. Go downstairs and inform the cops to let him pass. Then he turned back to Jeremy. I will be right there. I will go collect his belongings upstairs. Jeremy glanced at his watch. When Lorna left Ken alone, he proceeded to the coffee maker and poured another cup while contemplating. Now the shit is going to hit the fan, and it will all end up on you. Ken Burns. After less than 17 minutes, the automobile came to a halt in front of the house. Ken rushed inside after discovering that the door was unlocked. Lorna gestured at his belongings as he collected them. He looked at Jeremy, then back at Lorna, and remarked, "Who else is here? Have you found a substitute for me?" Lorna only smiled slightly and responded politely, "No, Ken. This is Jeremy Baker, a longtime family friend. He came to present me a few of statements claiming one thing against you, for destroying the family. The second complaint is against the school district for failing to follow its own office romance policy." I suddenly remembered what Beth had said about Jeremy a week ago. If he took on a case, he would win 9 times out of 10. He became pale, straining to find words, and finally muttered, "I'm taking all of my things into my arms. Lorna Jean, you are a stunning woman who is excellent in bed, but you are too expensive for me to pay." With these comments, he flew from the house. Jeremy stayed mute, despite wanting to comment on Lorna's decision. But it was more reasonable to exercise restraint in this situation. Randy's statements clearly described the entire incident. Friday in the 3rd week, Hutch came back from lunch when Freddie's phone rang. "Hello, Freddie. How are you, Chief? Your wife's automobile has just driven into the parking lot." "Okay. Thank you, Freddie." Hutch responded, turned off his phone, and proceeded to the reception area to see Janet, his assistant. "Lorna will be up in a minute. Please direct her to my office as soon as she arrives." "Yes, sir." Janet smiled. She then added more softly, "Sir." "Turning around?" Hutch asked. "Yes, Janet. You understand, sir. Mrs. Hutch is quite vulnerable right now, given what I heard from Mr. and Miss S. Baker yesterday, as well as seeing your son lose his anger on Sunday. Please be nice and take a step nearer her." Hutch smiled slightly. "You're correct. I am absolutely not used to circumstances like these. But, yeah, I will try to meet her halfway, but I am still unsure where this midway is. But let us not lose sight of our ultimate goal. You are aware that I adore my wife and cherish her above all else. I'd like to return to her." Janet grinned as he headed to his room. About 20 minutes later, she walked Lorna into the office and shut the door behind her. She took a few steps forward before pausing a few meters from the table. Hutch glanced at her and saw someone who was absolutely broken. She wore a gray t-shirt and basic trousers. His hair was simply combed and rested just below his shoulders. He had bruises under his eyes from not getting enough sleep. No makeup. The head is slightly bowed, the eyes are dull, and the shoulders are stooped. Hutch had never seen his wife in such a state, even after her parents' deaths or the news that her brother had died in Iraq. In his lawyerly method of conciliation negotiations, Hutch kept silent, allowing the opposing party to speak first. Lorna carried her purse in one hand and 2 sheets of paper with the other. He heard them rustling because she was shaking. She muttered in a hushed and doubtful tone, "Nor do I. So, basically, I give up. Raise the white flag. I truly need you. Oh God, I need you. I know I messed everything up horribly. Will you forgive me? Please me, please." There was no sign of the haughty and arrogant woman. Only his wife's shadow stood before him. And a pretty frail one at that, attempting to speak softly and pleasant while retaining a legal attitude to the conversation. He asked, "So, what do you propose?" Lorna responded, trembling slightly and nearly whispering. "So, Jeremy came to see me on Tuesday. He provided me a plan of action on where to begin, so that we could rejoin. He also showed me 2 lawsuits. God, I look like a total fool there. Jeremy stated that you wouldn't let him submit them because you wouldn't sign them. Oh, Normie, this makes me look like a total jerk." Still in a gentle voice, but in the tone of a lawyer conducting talks, he asked, "So, what are your plans of action?" Lorna was somewhat reassured by his tone and desired to listen to her. "First and foremost, I redecorated our bedroom, which included repainting, installing new carpet, changing the furniture, and rearranging it." He knew about the renovation. Crews arrived shortly after she departed for work Wednesday to remove all of his camera and audio equipment from his bedroom. Lorna, still shaking, handed him one of the sheets. Second, she spoke a little louder. "I went to the doctor, and she confirmed that I was all right while simultaneously lecturing me about not doing stupid things. She is on your side. It appears that everyone is on your side in this disaster." Hutch took the report from her and skimmed it. Then he placed it on the table and glanced at his wife again. She shifted slightly, then handed him the second sheet. Her hand shook, indicating her level of anxiety. The leaf rustled as she quietly passed it across the table again. "Third, I am retiring from the school district. Normie, I realized I couldn't work without you. She almost sobbed as she concluded her sentence. She then switched from one foot to another. Normie, I do not even want to try without you. Hutch realized that she had worked long and hard for her position in the school district, and her goals were entirely honest. It hurt him to see how difficult it was for her to give up everything. But he couldn't help but feel happy that she was willing to give up her profession so that they could be reunited. He carefully examined the letter of dismissal, since it was a vital document in the case. When I returned my gaze to where she stood, Lorna was no longer visible, and he noticed how she crawled around the table to the left as she crawled up. She sobbed and whimpered even more pitifully. Jeremy stated that I should go as low as possible and crawl, beg, and disgrace myself. Please disregard me. I apologize. I'm so sorry. She wrapped her arms over his left leg and rested her head in his lap. Please come home. Please. I cannot. Oh, Normie, I can't sleep when you're not around. I really need you, Normie. He noticed her handbag on the table and decided to put her honesty to the test one final time. Hutch took his cell phone out of his purse and noticed that it was switched off. He brought it up in front of her and told her to contact her lawyer and request that she file a petition to withdraw her divorce suit. He wanted to see how quickly she would respond. Lorna quickly grabbed the phone, turned it on, and leaned against her desk drawers. As she quickly dialed the lawyer's number, Elizabeth Myers answered. Lorna set the phone to speaker so Hutch could hear the entire chat. Hello, Carolyn. This is Lorna Hutchinson. Oh, hello, Mrs. Hutchinson. How can I help? Is Beth there? No, ma'am. She won't return until Monday. Do you want to leave a message? Yes. Inform her that I wish to withdraw my divorce suit. Okay, then I'll prepare the proper request for you to sign. If you arrive before 5 and sign, I will place it on her desk. Based on her last words, I believe she will not hesitate. And we'll get everything done right now, Carolyn said enthusiastically. Carolyn. Hutch smiled slightly in satisfaction at his remarks. Okay, Carolyn. Thank you. It's now 1:30. I'll be with you in 15-20 minutes. Okay, Mrs. Hutchinson. I'll prepare the documents, enter by the back door, and then use the elevators at the end of the hallway. There are no reporters present. We have several high-profile cases like yours. And journalists are practically standing guard outside the office. They even tried to take the seat next to us. Beth had to contact security. Thank you. Carolyn. See you later. Lorna shut off the phone and returned it to Hutch. He gave her a list of 3 items. I'll come about 5:30 or 6. If Katie is there, buy her a steak as well. She threw herself in his lap. Thank you. My hubby. I said something I'd like to take back. What exactly? I mentioned that maybe I don't love you anymore. Oh, Normie, I love you. I have always loved you and will always love you. I love you with all of my heart. And I really miss you. Oh, how I miss you. Come home. A sumptuous dinner and everything you desire awaits you. For the first time in about a month. He caressed her, brushed his palm against her cheek, then ran his fingers through her hair. And then, in the same calm but forceful tone, he stated, I need my wife. Someone encroached on it and attempted to remove it, but I don't like it one bit. She gazed up at him. I'm terribly sorry for allowing this to happen. Never come home and remove your belongings. Lorna said, rise up. I promise you, dear husband, you will not regret it. See you at 6:30 or so. She smiled at him before turning around and leaving the room. He looked after her and noticed that she was moving much more joyfully than when she first arrived. But she still wasn't like my former wife. The head is down, and the shoulders are slumped. I'd never seen her so unhappy and defeated. I hope I never see them again. Janet glanced through the door after a little period of time. Well done, sir. She departed with a smile. Thank you, Janet. Please put me through to Mr. Baker. A few minutes later, Janet's voice was heard over the intercom. Mr. Baker is on the second line. Hello, buddy. Hutch greeted. She was with me just a few minutes ago. Our plan appears to have worked, as this bitch has been broken. She went, and the real Lorna is about to return. Jeremy grinned. Great, Hutch. So, how is she? Oh man, Jeremy. She looks horrible. I hope and pray that I will never see her in this condition again. Do you remember how she appeared at her brother's funeral? Yes, I remember. So multiply the condition by 2 or 3. I, on the other hand, tried to make her feel better. I sent her to sign forms to withdraw the allegation. I told her to go get something and that I'd be there at 6. Jeremy laughed. Hutch, I've known you for many years, and you still manage to amaze me. He laughed again. So you are going to accept what she denied? That stupid Burns, yes. Old man. Maybe I won't do that again with her out there. What about tonight? Yes. Once, Or twice. So she recalls who is the owner. If there are no other options. Jeremy stopped laughing. But his voice indicated that he was still happy. I get what you're saying, Jenny. And I did it there a few times early in our marriage, and she interpreted it that way. We have not done this since then. Did she crawl on her stomach as low as possible? Her resignation letter, however, helped me realize her earnestness. Her sorrow was obvious, and felt as she held it out. It confirms that she prioritizes your marriage and family over everything else. She simply fell into a trap that happens from time to time in life, and we're glad we could help you get out of it. Yes, Jeremy, I am delighted you were there. You know, if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, I will be there too. Thank you. Friend, listen, we will chat on Monday. In the meantime, enjoy the weekend with this walking wife. Remind her who truly loves her. Yes. That is my plan. Until Monday. Lorna snuck quietly inside her lawyer's office and left, hoping that this nightmare would soon stop. She called Randy from the street. We caught him between couples. Hello, Mom. He replied in an assertive tone that was quite similar to his father's. Hey, Randy and Lorna, remarked resourcefully. I wanted to inform you that I had withdrawn the divorce action. So, everything will be officially confirmed on Monday. Great. I am glad to hear that. A significant step in the right direction, as you haven't been visiting there recently. I understand, Randy. But today, Dad will return home, and we will try to mend everything. That makes me happy too. Another step in the correct direction. Mom, I'm almost in the audience, but I'm so grateful you phoned, Randy. One more thing. Dad handed me a list of a few tasks for today. One of them had an unusual name. I don't want to go to the drugstore and ask about this. Lorna thought she heard her kid chuckling quietly. Where are you now, Mother? Approximately a block and a half south of my father's office. Fine. You'll notice a street that heads east. You walk on it for a block and a half. There will be an alley to the right. You proceed for around 15 meters, and you will come with an erotic bookstore. They will most likely have what you need. I was pleased to hear from you, Mom. You made my day. I'll phone Tim tonight to tell him. Okay, Randy, I love you. I love you too, Mama. I'm glad you've joined us again. Lorna read her purchases label as she left the modest business. She'd never had an issue with this. So, how was she going to spend her evening? She smiled and thought. Norman Hutchinson, it's all yours. As she returned to the main street, she observed a tattoo parlor across the street and remembered a story on the site about a man branding and marrying his romping wife. She went in. The master swiftly sketched the appropriate drawing and set to work. As she exited the salon, Lorelei reasoned, okay, now I'm branded forever. Next up comes my favorite jewelry store, followed by a grocery. As she approached the vehicle, Lorna got a call from Katie. Hello, Mom. Look, I have notes from each of my teachers. If I pass with flying colors, as I usually do, I'll graduate with a 4.0 GPA. Great, Katie. I was confident that you would swiftly catch up. But before Lorna could say anything about her father, Katie mentioned, Mom, I was invited to a sleepover with Lori Jameson today. I will be returning tomorrow for lunch. Can I? Lorna thought. The Jamesons are longtime family friends, and this will be an excellent opportunity for Norm and me to spend the night and morning together. And she agreed. Of course, dearest. I wish I knew where you are. I will have a surprise for you at lunch tomorrow. Thank you. Mom. See you tomorrow. Lorna returned home and immediately began making dinner. But then she paused and called Jenny. It's me, Jen. He's coming back today. It's nearly over. My self-created nightmare is finally ending. Wonderful, Lorna. I knew you wouldn't last long without one another. Yes, it is true. Let us meet for lunch on Tuesday or Wednesday. In the same location. Okay, Wednesday. That suits me. It's wonderful that my dearest friend in the world is back. Thank you, Jenny. Also, invite Barb to join you. I want her to understand that I do not hold anything against her. It was really hard to learn about this, and it still hurts. But I'm not about to rip her head off. And I wish to remain her friend. I'll explain that it is my fault. If I hadn't climbed into my high horse, nothing would have occurred. Tell her I was kicked off it. Okay, Lorna, I believe she will enjoy it. Call me on Sunday and let me know how you're doing. Okay. Okay, Jenny. Until Sunday. While preparing the dinner, Lorna looked at her watch. It was 5:40 when she set the table. She heard the garage door open. She grinned and lit the candle. Hutch entered the kitchen without his briefcase, turned off the phone, and set it next to hers on the counter. She grinned as she walked around the table, pausing about a meter away from him. She smiled as she spoke. Hello, husband. My phone is also turned off. Hutch stared at her for a few seconds. Dark circles remain beneath her eyes, and her hair is untidy, as if she combed it with fingers. But he thought, yes. Now you resemble my wife. He embraced and kissed her. When they pulled away, he only said hi. She took a little step back and bounced on her toes. I am so delighted you are back. You don't know how happy I am yet, but you will soon find out. Dinner is nearly ready. The table is set. And Norm, I finished all 3 duties for the day. Before she turned to face the stove, he saw a new big gold ring on her right index finger and interrupted her hand, asking, "What is this?" "Normie? When you were not present, I couldn't sleep. I was browsing the internet and came across websites containing stories. Several others mentioned the devotional ring worn on the right index finger. It is always in sight. It's tougher to ignore." He smiled in agreement. Not a horrible concept. According to the same narrative, the husband branded his unfaithful wife with a tattoo. She said, lowering the hem of her dress to reveal a new tattoo. He stared at her snow-white thigh and saw the brilliant blue numbers 100%. Hutches were inscribed in black letters above them in an arc, and property was written below in a semicircle, behind which was the red letter inscription, "No trespassing." He smiled and asked, "Why did you do it?" She lowered her hem and rubbed up to him. "Is this normal?" During this period, I realized something. First and foremost, I adore you more than words can explain. Second, I cannot exist without you. I need you to like me. Without you, I am not complete. And yes, Norman Hutchinson is a lawyer and certified public accountant. I'm your property. There will be no more uninvited guests. Now we'll enjoy a quiet meal. Then we will walk upstairs, where you will once again assert your rights. A bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa is chilling in the refrigerator. It pairs perfectly with steaks. Take it out and open it. I'll set everything out on the table. They began eating dinner in silence. Lorna then inquired, "How do you like your steak?" "Excellent, my dear. You are the only person that cooks steak the way I prefer it." "Lorna Jean, you are an excellent cook." She grinned and purred blissfully. "Thank you." They ate in silence for a few minutes before he spoke. "Lorna, Jeremy, and Jenny bought me dinner several times while this was going on. After dinner, Jeremy and I sat on their terrace and reminisced about the last 25 years with us, and nearly 27 with them. Hutch had a sip of wine. We concluded that none of us would be where we are today if our wives were not present. You say you need me. I need you as Lorna's wife. It worries me that we have grown apart and that work has come between us. She straightened up in her chair. He'd never spoken anything like this to her before. She was aware that her husband was not given to emotional confessions, and that one of his skills as a lawyer was his ability to exploit the feelings of others. But, in recent weeks, she has pushed him to a brief breakdown. He shoved Ken away in rage, and he yelled at her a week earlier. Apparently, everyone was correct. Her husband is indeed taking steps to meet her halfway. Lorna paused, unable to find the words. Neither Norman nor I understood I'm a part of you. Like your hands, if you cut them off and don't suture them back together, they will die. Thank you, Normie. He put down the knife and fork. Excellent comparison. Lorna, I love you. And sure, sweetheart, something will be missing from my life if you are not present. Hutch raised his glass, angled it slightly toward her, grinned, and took a sip. She raised her glass, took a sip, and placed it on the table, almost whispering. Oh, Normie, I've been so lonely the last few weeks. I felt as if I were in a frigid hell, cut off from everyone I loved. Now I realize how much I adore you, my lovely hubby. I'd like to disclose something that I don't want to tell anyone, including consultants. Okay, let's keep this between us. You can certainly trust me. That morning, I announced my resignation to Paul. He stated he spoke with you and Jeremy about 2 lawsuits. I just went outside into the yard, sat in the gazebo, and cried. The next day, I resolved to visit your office to carry out my action plan. I was terrified to approach you. I felt so humiliated. I sat in the car for quite a while. I was scared you wouldn't want to see or talk with me. I figured if you don't take me back, I'll get a pack of sleeping pills. I simply could not spend another night in our bed without you. He set the cutlery down and took her hands in his. Oh, Lorna, my dear Lorna, I didn't realize we'd led you to such a dead end. Sorry. I love you too much to hear that. You had these thoughts. He trembled in terror at the prospect of losing her, as a result of this entire scenario. Oh, Norm, I love you too. But it was my own folly, my own decisions, that got me here. I feel incredibly ignorant, gullible, and stupid. And then on Tuesday, I had lunch with Jenny, and she mentioned you and Barb Johnson. Oh, God. Normie, I was in a lot of agony. And then I realized how badly I'd harmed you. I'm still hurting, and you're probably hurting too. Jeremy stated that you planted cameras and microphones at our home and Ken's condominium, so you're aware of all the foolish things and words I've uttered. Tim and Randy were correct to tell me off. I could also set up Katie. Oh, Normie, she moaned pitifully, clutching his hands tighter while still peering into her eyes. He responded, yes, I forgive you. Barb felt horribly humiliated the next morning. She does not want to disrupt other people's families, and I did not do this for vengeance or any other comparable reasons. I'd never do it with you or Barb. But, Lorna, this was a rare incident. However, now pay close attention. I need to tell you everything. Then we'll try to put this behind us. And what I say now is only between us. We had the worst controversy that morning. When I arrived at Barb's, he appeared to be worse than when I went home. I assumed you would lead to a divorce. I was also concerned that you were trying to replace me with Ken. So this will remain between us. But, Lorna, at the time, I was considering Barb as a replacement for you. Lorna felt as though she had been hit in the chest. My heart skipped a few beats, and blood drained from my face. She felt dizzy and had difficulty breathing. She hesitated and muttered, my replacement. Oh, God. She thought Barb was roughly Ken's age, but after learning everything about Ken, she understood Barb was a much higher flyer, which meant she could easily take her spot. The awareness that she had almost lost everything, and would have been left with only money that Hutch didn't really need, and could easily earn back, fell on her with increased force. It dawned on her that Ken was not taking any chances, and the route from which she had literally crawled away would have led her to a lonely old life before she was 50. And she may have caught something terrible at 50. She'd look like she was in her 60s. She grabbed her husband's hands closer but couldn't find the words. Seeing her situation, he stated, I'm telling you this because you know me well enough. I rarely act rashly. I admit that I did not go to Barb with the purpose of getting her into bed. It simply happened that way. When I arrived, she had just begun making supper, so I went out into the yard to play ball with her boys. They are already deciding what to do with him. Lorna, I adore you more than life itself. But love should be mutual. And lately, I was wondering if you felt the same way about me. Lorna's knuckles were white from anxiety, but she stayed mute. Simultaneously, the desire to kill Ken Burns developed. They completed their dinner, and he murmured softly. And now, my dear wife, the only one I ever had and will ever have. We both took large steps towards each other. I've made changes at work so that I get home around 4 or 5 every weekday, and I'll be home on weekends as well. And as soon as we find acceptable tickets, I'd like to take a few weeks off to go on a cruise with you. He paused. She smiled, even though tears streamed down her cheeks. He cleansed them with a napkin before continuing. But now, sweetheart, I believe the time for words has passed. The hour for action has arrived. What is underneath that dress? I know there are no panties. He blew out the candle and helped her get up. I believe you should leave the dress here. He walked around the table to stand behind her. Ignore me. I will be naked. He noticed she had only had a few sips of wine and said softly, this is how I want to see my wife now, sober and naked. He unbuttoned her back, and the dress slipped to her feet. Tomorrow, we'll find the same ring for me. Let it serve as a reminder to both of us that our mutual affection has been restored. But I'm probably not going to get a tattoo. Lorna leaned back on his shoulder, turned to face him, grinned, and said, as you wish, my husband, lover, and everything. Hutch grabbed up his wife and brought her to the bedroom. As they walked, she murmured in his ear, if I do something stupid again, spank my bare ass. Slap me. Just do not ever leave me. If you leave, I have no doubt that I shall lie down and die. I will remember this. From now on, only death shall separate us, my beloved. He spoke as they neared the bedroom. Then there was sex after the shower, while still naked. They went to bed and wrapped themselves in a blanket. They were giggling when Katie arrived home. She saw 2 plates and glasses on the kitchen table. Hearing conversations upstairs, she wondered if Mom had brought Ken back, before calling her father and brothers. Katie decided to check. She entered the door, found her mother in bed with someone, and yelled, Mother! She was going to punish her mother completely when her father turned around and said, Hello, Princess. Dad. She gasped. Then, like a 7 or 8-year-old kid, Katie jumped on their bed and sat between her parents. She chuckled as she smelled the perfume. It looks like you two are catching up. Her father tickled her. Lorna asked her daughter, why did you return so early? Katie explained, I thought you'd come home tomorrow when Hutch stopped tickling. We were in Lori Hamilton's basement, chilling. We are 5 girls who have been buddies since childhood. Lori's parents retired to bed at about 9:30 p.m. Then 3 guys arrived. I came to Lori's with Heidi Thompson. Her parents are now going through a difficult divorce. After all that transpired at our house, as well as my general idiocy on Monday, I simply did not want to be involved in this right now. So we headed home. She rolled over to her father's side. So you finally made peace? Yes, sweetie, Lorna responded. We'll cancel the divorce on Monday. I've already talked to Randy. He'll call Tim. I thought I'd surprise you tomorrow. But your father is back for good. And I'll do all in my power to preserve things that way. Lorna was packing the final box of her personal stuff in her office on Monday morning of the 4th week, about noon. Ken confidently approached the office with his typical self-assurance and asked, Are you going? I heard you'd quit. I tried calling you several times. I suggested we meet for a cup of coffee. Let us chat. Lorna interrupted him. No, Ken, never. My husband returned home Friday evening and seized ownership of his belongings. I took it all, and yes, I mean everything, more than once. I also wanted to mention that he is now the only person who will be with me for the rest of my life. To tell the truth, last weekend, I learned Norman has more weapons and is a far greater lover than you can handle. His smile quickly faded, and his shoulders dropped. He slipped his hands into his pockets and turned away, ready to leave. Lorna smiled and continued. One more thing, Ken. My spouse advised me that if I see you today, I should thank you for phoning me on time. If there was anything left of his self-confidence, it was utterly gone, and she couldn't resist. As Ken approached the exit again, she said, Hey, guy from the coast. Good luck in Arizona. After meeting with Jeremy and Hutch, Paul compelled Ken to accept a post as principal at an elementary school in the Phoenix region or face termination. Paul made it obvious that if Ken did not travel to Arizona, he would have a tough time obtaining work in government or large corporations. That day, Ken arrived to pick up documentation for his new job. Paul informed him that he would have to report to work the following Monday. Hutch arrived at his workplace shortly after 8 a.m. As usual, he was in great spirits. Good morning, Janet. How are you doing on this wonderful day? Good morning, sir. I am doing great. And, judging from your smile, so are you. Yes, Janet. I'm in a great mood. Lorna too. Over the weekend, we got to know each other well. Again, in multiple ways. Janet smiled. Sir, I have not seen you smile like that in a long time. I am very pleased to see this. Thank you, Janet, and I'm relieved it's over. You all did an excellent job completing tasks in record time. By the way, Janet, I'd like to do something special for everyone involved in this project. You see, simply giving out cash bonuses is not what I want to express. However, this will also happen. But I need more. Got it, sir. In the meantime, I believe you have one message from Dr. Assad. He asked me to call him back before 11 a.m. at his office. Janet handed him a note, sir, about your team. Rose stopped by this morning. It appears that she and Freddie are starting an affair. She laughed and said that, because of recent precedent, they were now computer nerds in love and wanted to discuss the company's employee romance policy with you. Hutch laughed. I believe we can arrange something for these two. They work well together. You understand my schedule. Schedule them for the middle of the day, even if you need to move something else. I just wanted to speak with them about the audit in Dallas. I believe they are the only ones who can dig up everything. Freddie is a licensed attorney in Texas, correct? Yes, sir. I believe Texas was the first state where he took the exam. He is originally from Houston. Great. Agree on a time and notify me. I need to go over a few more details with them. With these statements, he disappeared inside his office, first calling Dr. Assad back. Hello, doctor. How did it go? Dr. Assad replied. Hello, Hutch. Great to hear from you. My assistant made a huge mistake, and it appears that yesterday's patient will suffer long-term ramifications. Hutch laughed. When he was calm, he inquired. Does he feel anything? Oh, no, nothing at all. I gave him the medication so that he may wake up this morning energized. Great, doctor. I cannot help but laugh. He will now find himself in the desert as the director of an elementary school. There will be mothers and grandmothers among those he likes. Also included are teachers and other personnel. And he will not succeed. The doctor also laughed. Yes, not the most appealing prospect. Thank you, doctor. I believe we've rescued a lot of marriages in Arizona. Yes, I removed all of the records. So it was as if nothing had occurred. Great, doctor. If you ever need a lawyer or an auditor, please contact us. When Hutch hung up the phone, he leaned back in his chair, placed his hands behind his head, and wondered how many Arizona marriages he had helped get out of trouble. After ending a chat with his realtor about decorating a house for a doctor's assistant, Hutch asked Janet to connect him with Mr. Baker. Hello, Jeremy. How are you doing? Excellent, Hutch. Was I on your list? So how is Lorna doing? Completed the plan. I assigned her chores. Yes. Thank you for participating in this. We need to have supper or BBQ with our spouses. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Do you remember my helper, Laura Thomas? Friday morning, week 4. Early in the morning, Ken Burns sat at the airport, waiting for a flight to Dallas. From there to Phoenix. We've discovered the right gate. He sat down in the waiting area, convinced that things couldn't get much worse. A few minutes before boarding, he decided to call the number on speed dial. Dad? Hello, Kenny. They claim you are going to Arizona. Yes, it appears that I am fed up with everyone. The father laughed. That is putting it mildly, son. Listen, Dad. Perhaps you can arrange for me to be sent to the north or somewhere along the Atlantic coast. Even in the neighborhood, Washington. Not this time, son. Do you remember? Approximately 12 years ago. We were almost imprisoned for a violation. Then your uncles and I nearly ended up in court. Even our dear lawyers agreed that we needed to make a deal with the probe. However, your grandfather, KJ, called a powerful law firm, and they won the case. They were Baker and Hutchinson. I hope you know who they are to our family. Ken eventually withered. It never occurred to him that Hutch and Baker had already rescued his entire family. When I discovered that you were confused with Hutch's wife, my father said, everything became plain to me. Any of them may transport you to the desert, with a single call. Furthermore, in the shape of an unidentified corpse. So be grateful that you were simply transported to Arizona and left with a diploma. Furthermore, I'm cutting you off from your family. You have your own funds from the trust. But your actions has tarnished our reputation, and you are now on your own. Ken was stunned, and fell into despair, when the flight attendant announced boarding for the first-class trip on Monday morning. Hutch entered Janet's waiting room a week later, shortly after 8 o'clock. He was in great spirits. Good morning, Janet. How are you doing on this great day? Excellent, sir. How are you? You cannot imagine how thrilled I am. Over the weekend, the entire family joined us again. I believe we will soon be even more united than we were 7 or 8 months ago. Lorna and I are convinced that we would not want anyone to go through what we have in recent weeks. But we try to make the best of it. Sir, I'm extremely delighted for you. How are things at home? Thanks. Everything's fine. The pupils are performing well in their studies. The spouse is content with his career, but he wishes to pursue other interests, such as golf. A paunch appears while you play by yourself, correct? Yes, sir. But, I have a membership at that country club. I can never recall its name. We should all get outside. Find a foursome for Saturday morning and let me know. Oh, Janet. On the field, you and your spouse can refer to me as Norman, Norm, or Hutch, but not as sir. Okay, sir. I will check the time and let you know. Your first visitor is already waiting in your office. Thank you, Janet. He smiled and entered his office. Beth Myers waited for him there, squirming uneasily in her chair. Hello, Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you for agreeing to host me. I wish to apologize. I should not have gotten involved in your wife's business and called you. Some coworkers warned me, but I am too stubborn. Hutch did not say anything, just looking at her. She no longer appeared as assured as previously. A little chubby, about 60 meters tall. Not really noteworthy. It was instantly evident how Ken might have conditioned her to take on this case. Furthermore, she explained, I sold my practice to 3 colleagues. The transaction is expected to finalize in less than a month. And then I see my uncle in Stockton, California. He wants to retire, and I can take on his clientele in general. I need to join the California State Bar. I am convinced that I will pass the exam. But I would like you and Mr. Baker to withdraw your letters from our board. Please. Hutch sat back in his chair and crossed his fingers across his chest. And why on earth would we do this? If you do this, I will leave the city and cease harassing you. Fine. I'll consult with Mr. Baker. However, if you are out of town by that day next month, we will remove our letters. Beth quickly placed the cup on the table and hopped up. Thank you, sir. I will not disappoint you as soon as I purchase a ticket. I'll phone you from the airport to give you the flight number. Thank you again. She said her goodbyes and went. A few minutes later, Janet entered. It appears that everything went fine. Yes, Janet. When she went, please get Mr. Baker. Hutch laughed gently and muttered to himself. Victory. The sweet taste of victory. Lorna sat at a round table with her entire family and a few other guests that evening. A month after spending 15 days on a river cruise in Europe with her husband, a semi-annual benefit event was conducted for the Police and Fire Foundation. Today, she had to give a reporting speech to the full table. Lorna felt at ease knowing that her husband, who assisted her in preparing her speech, was on the left with his girlfriend, followed by Randy with his, Katie with her beau, and Barbara Johnson with Hutch's brother Michael, a Navy officer recently transferred to a Norfolk base. Lorna rose up, picked up her abstract cards, and walked to the podium once the presenter announced her name. After fixing the microphone, she began. I must say that, given everything that has happened recently, as well as my own ignorance, it is difficult for me to stand before you today. I know you all know me as Lorna Jean, but to put a stop to speculations and media stories, and to clarify the issue, please allow me to introduce myself again. I will be until my final breath. Here. She stared at her family, focusing her attention on her husband, Mrs. Norman Hutchinson, a lawyer. She raised her left hand to demonstrate how the diamonds glittered on her ring finger. The audience responded with applause, followed by cheers of appreciation when everything was silent. She heard Jeremy shout loudly, "Welcome back." Lorna Jean Hutch sat, listening to his wife's remarks. He felt proud of her. Smart. Beautiful. Lorna Jean Hutchinson is the lady he really loves. Yes, neither of them is sinless. However, she stays his wife, and he remains her spouse. And he loves her in ways that cannot be described in words. In the depths of his spirit, he thought that with their mutual labor, psychotherapy, and time, his faith in her would be entirely restored. She used all of her strength to clean up this mess, as she described it. In other respects, her efforts strengthened their connection, bringing them closer. Maybe that's why he let the matter escalate so far. At one of the surrounding tables sat several young, single lawyers from a prominent firm. They talked softly about Lorna's brief affair with Ken. As her speech drew to a conclusion, one person stated, "I understand why he was attracted to her. If I were him, I'd try it for myself. If there was any chance that I could get away with it, she should be fired in bed." Another person complained, "Yes, but he is currently exiled in the desert. Visit Phoenix, Arizona. Nothing good." Third, furthermore, they claim he struggles with intimacy, and the physicians shrug their shoulders. Ken is certain that this is Hutch's doing. An elderly lawyer in his 40s, seated next to him, replied with a smile, "Of course. However, you cannot prove it." After a few more acts, there was live music to dance to. Hutch rose up, took his wife's hand, and led her to the landing. The first number was a soothing composition. He held his wife and whispered to a soft song. "You did great today, darling." Lorna gazed up at him, and said, "Thanks to the wonderful literary Black, who is also the love of my life. He helped me to prepare and trust in myself. Thank you, Norman. I love you, Lorna. I swear to never fail again." She gripped to him even tighter as they danced effortlessly. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened.